Huang Yueli was dumbstruck as she had been completely defeated by his thick skin. However, even though nothing nice comes out from this fellow's filthy mouth, but knowing that his motive was to let her soak in the medicinal bath for treatment, Huang Yueli wasn't a single bit worried. As a doctor, he would definitely not do anything which would affect the treatment. After all, what Liu Buyan was most afraid of was to ruin his own reputation as the #1 divine doctor. So Huang Yueli might as well let him help hold her as she slowly made her way to the bathtub. Since it saved more energy when someone was holding her, and since that person liked to service others as though a serving maid, then why would she reject this offer? The duo stopped when they reached the side of the bathtub. Huang Yue knew that the next step she should take was to undress and jump into the bathtub. So she looked back and stared at Liu Buyan, clearly intending that he should get lost. However, Liu Buyan didn't move a single step and looked back directly at her, his expression filled with provocation. "What's the matter? Lass, why aren't you undressing? Could it be you are waiting for your brother here to help you undress? Then I really won't stand on ceremony." Liu Buyan waited for her exasperated or embarrassed reaction because she only had two routes to take. One was to undress in front of him, or she could take up his suggestion to help her remove her clothes. And it seemed that it was impossible for her to agree to either one route, so what reaction would she come out with? It was something worth looking forward to. Liu Buyan actually didn't realize that his thinking was abnormal, but after that person had died, he hadn't met with any young lass who had made him interested in the past 10 over years and simply couldn't wait to tease her. Huang Yueli remained rooted to the ground and calmly shot him a glance. "Uncle, how old are you now? You still dare to claim that you're a brother? If you had kids when you were younger, you'd probably be my grandpa's age already." Liu Buyan's expression on his handsome face paused for a moment and very quickly, it turned green and purple as though he had just swallowed a housefly. "Wa cow, where on earth have your eyes gone to? Uncle? Have you ever seen such a handsome and charming uncle? And grandpa? Pa your head. I'm not that old, all right?" As compared to this obviously inexperienced young lass, he was naturally older by quite a bit. But for 9-degree realm practitioners like him, their lifespan would last at least a few thousand years, and as for their looks, they would have to wait till they reached 900 years old before signs of aging would appear. Any time before that, he would maintain his looks when he had just broke through to the 9-degree realm when he was 28 years old. So amongst the 9-degree realm practitioners, Liu Buyan was considered as extremely young, and with such a devilish handsome face, from 3-year-old Lolita to several 100-year-old 9-degree realm female practitioners, which lady had not been smitten by him? Only this blind lass in front of him dared to despise him for his age. Liu Buyan's expression turned green, and just as he was about to lecture this young lass on what was known to respect her elders. Ugh, no, to admire handsome men. This round, Huang Yueli opened her mouth again. "I say, uncle, do you really want to see me undress?" Of course. Liu Buyan originally wanted to trick her, and as he had been agitated by her earlier, he naturally would not let go of this opportunity to make a practical joke out of her who had despised her as old. Huang Yueli pursed her lips as though she was in an awkward position. "All right then, I'm really going to undress." What? Did he hear it wrongly? This lass was really preparing to undress in front of him? You can also listen on. Liu Buyan's eye turned wide as it almost dropped out from its sockets. No, wait a minute, this must be unreal. This lass would rather die than give in to the assassin, but when she met him, a charming and elegant handsome man, she actually gave in that easily. Could it be that she was conquered by his handsome looks? Liu Buyan narcissistically thought, while he didn't really believe this. Was this lass fooling around with him? Trying to scheme him, too innocent. When he hoaxed her continuously later, it would definitely make her cry non-stop. Liu Buyan's mentality now was equivalent to a 7 or 8-year-old boy. The more interest he had towards a girl, the more he wanted to make her cry. Apparently, he didn't notice how childish he was. However, without waiting for him to continue, Huang Yueli said, "All right, then I'll undress now." Saying that, she really pulled open the front lapel of her clothes, and with a whoosh, she had revealed her outer clothes. Fuck. Liu Buyan's first reaction was to turn around and both his hands covering his eyes tightly. "You wretched lass, don't you have any morals at all? You actually undressed in front of a stranger? Ha 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 ha. Huang Yueli's laughter came reverberating from Liu Buyan's back. He then realized that he had been tricked, and as he turned around, he saw that there were several layers of clothes on Huang Yueli. The outer layer was a smock, and after she had removed that, she still had inner robe and undergarments on her. So there was no way she would be exposed. Stinking lass, you dare to fool me? Liu Buyan's expression turned as ugly as it could be. Huang Yueli laughed as she replied, Uncle, don't act tough. I realized that you're actually an honorable and upright man. Me? You're talking about me? What honorable and upright man could I be? Did you make a mistake? You really think I won't force you? Liu Buyan flushed red as an embarrassed glint flashed past his face. Huang Yueli laughed till she couldn't speak. In actual fact, she had already discovered in her past life that Liu Buyan only appeared as a Casanova and abnormal, but in reality, he wasn't the extreme which he displayed to the outside world. She had already witnessed before in her past life that sometimes when Liu Buyan talked to her, his face would be flushed, and he looked rather pure and innocent. No one knew why he displayed a Casanova look and acted in a flirtatious behavior. Seeing that Liu Buyan's expression was a mix of embarrassment and anger, Huang Yueli quickly grabbed hold of a screen and pulled it towards the side of the bathtub. I'm really going to undress now, so just wait behind the screen. Why should I listen to you? Liu Buyan's expression was black like coal as he was filled with anger, bearing a look which showed that he couldn't wait to strangle her to death. However, his actions and the words he said were totally the opposite. Liu Buyan looked at Huang Yueli holding up her dizzy head and taking the screen from her. He moved it to encircle the surroundings and even helped to pour the water and medicinal herbs into the bathtub before leaving the area. Walking to the external boundary outside the screen, he sat down on a chair. Slight rustling sound echoed from the screen, and it was obvious that Huang Yueli was really undressing this time. Liu Buyan sat on the chair and hesitated for some time before he called out, Hey, young lass, the water in the bathtub is boiling hot and the medicinal herbs inside are rather stimulating, so when you enter. Before he could finish, he heard a splash sound. You can also listen on. Must be more careful, otherwise it will scald you to death. Liu Buyan mumbled as he completed his sentence and discovered that the lass had already entered the bathtub, and his expression turned dark once again. He had gone through an intense battle in his mind before he decided to give up the opportunity to play a trick on her. Just as he wanted to remind her to take caution of the heat, who knew that this lass was looking for death and had jumped right in. What a waste of his precious sympathy. Even if she was scalded to death, she deserved it. Liu Buyan silently cursed. But after a while, he discovered that there was no strange sound coming from inside at all. Only the sound of water gently flowing, which let out a light sploshing sound, could be heard. Could it be that this lass was really scalded to death alive? Liu Buyan's eyebrows knitted into a knot as he opened his mouth and inquired, Hey, lass, are you still alive? You had spent so much effort to save me, and now you're cursing me to die. Huang Yueli's sulky voice was heard from behind the screen. Liu Buyan heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he felt something was weird. This medicinal bath. Don't you find it scorching hot? Scorching hot? It's still all right. Huang Yueli answered indifferently. To tell the truth, she really didn't feel that this medicinal bath was scorching hot. The reason was because every time she advanced, the medicinal bath that she was soaked in was hotter than this by at least 100 times. Besides that, the bathtub was continuously heated by true phoenix fire, so that feeling was extremely overwhelming. It could simply burn a live person into charcoal. If it hadn't been for her unique flame spirit physique, she would probably had ended up dead. Compared to that, Liu Buyan's medicinal bath was merely stimulating, so to her, it was just an appetizer. However, when these words fell onto Liu Buyan's ears, he displayed an astonished look. In fact, he had intentionally added more ingredients to this medicinal bath because he was petty over the fact that this lass had tricked him several times, so he purposely added in plenty of stimulating herbs. Not only were these medicinal herbs were not harmful to Huang Yueli's body, it would only do her good. But once the medicinal water had risen to the boiling point, that stimulating feeling. If an ordinary person's finger were to even slightly touch a little bit of it, that person would immediately yell inordinately. To think that This lass actually had no feeling. Just how strong was her determination? Liu Buyan's eyes turned wide, but he could not speak out at this moment. Huang Yueli didn't say much and just sat there, soaking in the medicinal bath. But after soaking there for a while, she felt that it was too boring, and adding on to the fact that her head was still rather dizzy, she almost fell asleep in the bathtub. She raised her voice and called out, "Hey, uncle, are you still outside?" "I'm here, what's wrong?" Liu Buyan was holding on to a medical scroll as he sat outside. "What's up? Want me to soak in the bath with you? Say so earlier. Even if you did, I also won't accompany you. TSK, who cares about that? I was just about to say, since it's so boring, let's have a chat." The corners of Huang Yueli's lips twitched. This fellow was good in everything except that his mouth was just too cheap. Chat about what? Chat. Uncle, this afternoon you told me that you're the #1 divine doctor Liu Buyan. Is that true? Liu Buyan sulkily replied, "What do you think? I've already nursed you to around 70 or 80% of your health and you're still asking such questions? Are you really blind?" I was just asking. Huang Yueli had only wanted to find a topic to chat so that she wouldn't fall asleep in the bath, in case she choked on the water. But after exchanging a few sentences with Liu Buyan, her heart felt a swirl because there was a burning question which she had kept within her heart for a very long time. "Uncle, I heard that you are good friends with Soaring Heavens Continent's #1 expert Mu Chengying. Is that true? Do you know, how is he right now? You can also listen on." It was after Huang Yueli popped the question did she realized how much she longed to know about Mu Chengying's current situation. Before this, she was situated at a small place like South Yu Kingdom and had no way nor channel to find out about Mu Chengying's news. So at that moment, her inner heart was still at peace, suppressing the imperative feeling. As she was a rational person, she knew it wouldn't help even if she was anxious, so the only thing she could do was to take one step at a time to gradually become stronger and think of ways to achieve her goal. However, now that Mu Chengying's best buddy was just right beside her, Huang Yueli could no longer contain the impulse within her. The minute the words came out of her mouth, her heart started pounded madly. It had been 2 months since she was reincarnated into this body and she could finally find out Mu Chengying's situation. But after waiting for several moments, she didn't get a reply from Liu Buyan. Huang Yueli subconsciously frowned as puzzlement got her wondering what that wily man could be thinking about. After a while more, there was still no sound from outside of the screen. She could no longer keep it in and questioned, "Hey, uncle, are you still there?" "Here." Liu Buyan answered in a low tone. "I asked you something earlier, why didn't you answer me?" "What did you ask me? I didn't hear you clearly." Liu Buyan's tone sounded weird. If it had been normal times, Huang Yueli would have long realized something was not right. But today, she was just too anxious to find out about Mu Chengying's situation, so she had overlooked this point. "Uncle, you must be getting old, you actually are hearing impaired. I was asking you, do you know what's happening in Blue Profound Sect and what is Murong Sect Master doing nowadays? I heard that he had reached the peak of 9-degree realm many years ago and had been searching for the pathway to God realm, so has he successfully broken through to God realm? And has he married anyone? Does he have anyone beside?" The minute Huang Yueli opened her mouth, she realized that the number of things she wanted to know were simply too many. It had been 14 long years since they had been apart. 14 years was enough for a baby to become a beautiful young lady. It wouldn't be surprising if anything were to happen in this period of time. Hence the more Huang Yueli asked, the more unstoppable she became. However, just as she was talking without respite, suddenly, "Enough! Shut up!" Liu Buyan's tone brimmed with anger as though a jolt of lightning had exploded beside her ear. "You're not allowed to mention Mu Chengying, this name." The voice was fuming with rage between gritted teeth, was able to make Huang Yueli feel the deep grudge Liu Buyan had within. Huang Yueli was dumbstruck momentarily. "But, isn't Mu Chengying, shut up. I'm asking you to shut your mouth." With a whoosh, Liu Buyan actually pushed the screen between the both of them flat onto the ground as he walked in utterly discomfited. Huang Yueli hurriedly pushed her body downwards a little more, allowing only her neck to surface above while the rest of her body was submerged in the water below. Luckily the bathtub was high and could basically cover her entirely. Liu Buyan took large strides towards her, and the usually composed, smiling, handsome face was now flushed red as the corners of his eyes were raised. The rage could be visibly seen. "Young lass, I've been very tolerant with you. On account of your young age, and you look like all the tricks and unkind words that you had done and talked, I've already not haggled with you on it and even curing you. But this does not mean that you can easily step on my bottom line. You can also listen on." As Liu Buyan was speaking, the profound energy within gushed out uncontrollably, and the surrounding air instantly became scorching hot. Even though he didn't meant for it to happen, but Liu Buyan was still a genuine 9-degree realm practitioner, and just this unintentional release of his profound energy caused some serious impact on Huang Yueli's dantian. She made an oomph sound and felt something sweet gushing up her throat, almost spitting out a mouthful of blood. Huang Yueli quickly controlled the limited profound energy she had in her body in order to minimize a portion of the impact. However, as the disparity of their cultivations as too huge, she was still able to feel the injury on her meridians getting serious by the minute. A sliver of blood flowed down from one corner of her mouth. Liu Buyan saw her blood, and he recollected his thoughts, gave a cold snort and retracted his profound energy. However, the fury on his face did not seem to lessen. "Women are so superficial. Why are you all only after the looks in a man? Continent's #1 handsome male. What about it? Am I worse off than him? People who think he's more handsome are really blind. As for continent's #1 expert, that's a huge joke. Usually saying how powerful he is, he couldn't even protect the woman who he loves. Can he even be considered as a man?" As Liu Buyan's face sunk, he sneered. "Huh." When Huang Yueli heard these, she became even more lost. At the same time, the shock in her heart had multiplied several times. No one knew better than Huang Yueli on the strength between Mu Chengying and Liu Buyan's friendship. They were best buddies who were able to leave their entire fortunes and lives in each other's hand. There was even a period of time when both of them couldn't leave one another's sight. Huang Yueli had even wondered if both of them were in that kind of relationship. In her previous life, both of them had knew one another for more than 20 years and had always been each other's most trustable friend. Huang Yueli was very sure that Liu Buyan would be able to help her locate Mu Chengying. But from the current situation, it looked like, why were things so different from what she had imagined? From Liu Buyan's reaction, it was definitely not faked, and moreover, he had no reason to act in front of a second-degree realm young lady like her. The truth was now right before her. Towards Mu Chengying, Liu Buyan hated him to the core, to the extent that he didn't allow anyone to mention Mu Chengying's name. How was this possible? If it hadn't been something that she had witnessed with her own eyes, even if Huang Yueli was beaten to death, she wouldn't believe this would have happened at all. Mu Chengying and Liu Buyan fell out. Moreover, from such a wonderful relationship, the two friends turned foes. What was going on? She completely could not comprehend. Liu Buyan intentionally restrained his imposing grandeur, just in case he jolted Huang Yueli to death accidentally. But the anger within had not dissipated. He took a few steps forward and had stuck himself to the side of the bathtub. He lowered his head and looked at Huang Yueli's eyes. Huang Yueli took a towel with the intention to cover herself, but as the towel was not big, she felt that her movements would lead to her being exposed instead. Just as she was hesitating, she suddenly felt a sharp pain on her chin. Liu Buyan stretched his hand and pinched her chin. Using that infuriated handsome face, he inched towards her pale delicate face as his gaze locked in on her eyes. "Little lass, I think you're intentionally acting ignorant with the intention to anger me, right? You can also listen on." Huang Yueli's eyes grew wide as she felt the strength gripping on her chin becoming stronger, as though it was going to break her chin into fragments. Her face contorted in pain. "No, I didn't mean it in that way. Liu, divine doctor, why would you think in this way? You dare to say you didn't?" Liu Buyan's voice instantly became colder than usual. Who in the entire soaring heavens continent doesn't know that it is a taboo to mention that person's name in my face? Whoever dares to mention about him in front of me is simply looking for death. For so many years, no one had dared to do what you did, purposely mentioning him in front of me, and you dare to say that you're not provoking me. This. I really didn't know. Huang Yueli's heart skipped, simply unable to believe her ears. Judging from what Liu Buyan meant was that he and Mu Chengying had turned from friends to foes, and it had already been in such a state for 10 over years. Didn't that meant that these two had completely fallen out with one another and became enemies not long after she died in the northern icefields? What on earth had happened? She recalled that 1 month before her death, she had still seen Liu Buyan and Mu Chengying drinking together, and at that time, both of them behaved like they were best buddies. Subsequently, what happened? Huang Yueli felt that herself was innocent as she didn't know what had happened. How would she know that such good buddies like them would mutually fall out with each other to the extent that Liu Buyan did not even want to hear Mu Chengying's name? It's all over. Would Liu Buyan harm her on impulse? Her injury had finally got a little better. However, Huang Yueli was still fortunate. Luckily, she was overly concerned earlier and had not revealed her status at the first moment. Otherwise, if Liu Buyan had found out that she was the reincarnation of Huang Yueli, then she would get into deep trouble. In the past, when Liu Buyan and Mu Chengying were close, she was the sister-in-law. But after both of them had fallen out, she guessed that in Liu Buyan's eyes, she had become the enemy's woman. Using the enemy's woman to exact revenge was commonly seen, and if things turned bad, she might even lose her little life here. Now that Liu Buyan doesn't know her real identity, he probably wouldn't kill her. After all, she was a patient whom he had accepted for treatment, and if she died at his turf before she was fully cured, it would be damaging to his reputation. Liu Buyan was extremely concerned regarding matters which would affect his reputation on medical skills. As expected, Liu Buyan stared daggers at her for some time, and before he crushed her chin, he snorted eventually, released his grip and ditched her. Huang Yueli's head turned to one side and coughed non-stop, feeling the blood in her chest gushing up. Obviously, she had sustained a sizable internal injury. Who on earth did she offend? Before her old injury was healed, she sustained a new one. Liu Buyan saw her suffering and a sense of guilt flashed past his eyes. But very quickly, he hid his emotions. His chilly glare fell onto her as his voice appeared cold and emotionless. I don't care if you really didn't know or pretending not to know. If I were to hear you mention his name once more, I absolutely have 1,000 ways to let you remain alive. But to suffer 10,000 times more than you're dead, you better mark my words well. Saying that, Liu Buyan resolutely turned his head, and with big strides, he slammed his way out of the door. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli held her chi and blood-raging chest as she looked at Liu Buyan's leaving back, her mind still in puzzlement. No matter how she thought about the matter between Mu Chengying and Liu Buyan, she couldn't figure it out. However, today's matter also gave her a reminder. It was not possible for her to use her past life's experience to judge the current soaring heavens continent's powerhouse distribution and interpersonal relationships. After all, in the 14-year interval, the number of things that had changed were just too much. Even the friendship between Mu Chengying and Liu Buyan could change completely. Then as compared to the relationship between the various sects and powerhouses, the changes in these would be much easier. If she had intended to rely on her past life's experience, then she would ultimately suffer a setback. As for today, her luck was considered all right. It was just out of some concerns that she did not reveal her identity, and since Liu Buyan didn't show any intentions to kill, she was able to escape the calamity. If it had been anyone else, perhaps that person wouldn't be that lucky. Huang Yueli sat in the bathtub until the water had turned chilly. She had just adjusted her internal breath, and standing up, she dried herself and wore her outer clothes. As she had been injured by Liu Buyan's earth-attributed profound energy, Huang Yueli was depleted of energy, and the minute she laid back on the bed, she drowsed to sleep not long after. Right at the moment before she fell asleep, Huang Yueli's mind suddenly flashed a thought. 14 years, everything had changed. In that case, had Mu Chengying's feelings towards her changed as well? 3 days passed by with a flash. Northeast section of Skycloud City, Li Moying's sect. Moyi was sitting in the guest room as the feeling of uneasiness grew. It had been 3 days since he rushed back to the sect from South Yu Kingdom. But Li Moying had not once ordered to see him, And because he was worried that he would disturb his master's closed-door cultivation, so he did not disturb him at all. Initially he was confused by Murong Fei's saying, feeling that what she said made some sense. But after a few days, Moyi reiterated his thinking and felt that something was wrong. He had returned for so long and Li Moying had always been in closed-door cultivation at the rear mountain. Not once did he leave, not to mention meeting with any danger. Everyone in the sect knew about this, so there was no way to fabricate this. Since Li Moying was in closed-door cultivation, not able to make any time to meet with him, then what was the reason for asking him to return? The most puzzling thing was the letter from the Swan Goose mentioned that Li Moying had met with an unsolvable danger, so all the shadow guards were to be recalled back, otherwise he would not be able to solve this trouble. But Moyi realized that the only shadow guard who had rushed back seemed to be only him. For such a long time, he had not seen a second shadow guard appear in the sect. Now that things were so queer, Moyi couldn't help but feel suspicious. He reckoned over and over again and a shocking guess appeared in his mind. That was, Li Moying did not actually send him any letter for him to rush back to the sect. The Swan Goose letter that he received could have been fake. If it wasn't for this case, there was simply a way to explain the various doubts which had occurred. But if this was the truth, what was the motive in sending him this letter? Once Moyi started to think towards this direction, his heart turned terrified instantly. Because his main duty in South Yu Kingdom was to protect Hunang Yueli. Then the motive in luring the tiger down the mountain was naturally to act towards Huang Yueli. You can also listen on. When Moyi thought of this, the sweat beads on his forehead started sprouting like crazy as his heart turned icy cold. How could he have been so silly and didn't realize at that point that someone would have falsified Li Moying's command to transfer him away to harm his future mistress? If his guess was right, then wouldn't Huang Yueli be in grave danger? Huang Yueli was just a second-degree realm practitioner and she had no expert bodyguards protecting her. And the only people who could possibly knew about Moyi's identity could only be Li Moying's enemies, and their power were definitely extraordinary. In comparison, Huang Yueli was just a little lamb who lacked the ability to resist. As long as Moyi had left, she would become a piece of fatty meat, waiting for others to divide up. The more Moyi though, the more terror curdled his blood. Very soon, the back of his shirt was drenched in sweat. Things have really taken a bad turn. He had fallen into someone's scheme to return to the sect, and that was equivalent to exposing Huang Yueli to the enemy, and she was being exposed without any form of defense. The worst thing of all was that he had only realized this only now. He had spent 3 days traveling back and subsequently he was sent to the guest room to rest for another 3 days. All in all, it had been a total of 6 days. For a practitioner to kill someone, under the circumstances of disparity of power, one would only require a few breaths to kill. 6 days was enough for Huang Yueli to be killed 180 times. Now, there was a 90% chance that Huang Yueli had already met with an evil scheme. Thinking of this, Moyi's heart was filled with guilt as he couldn't wait to use his life to atone for his mistake. No one knew more clearly than him on how important Huang Yueli was to Li Moying. That aloof and emotionless master of his had usually not paid any attention to any woman, and for the first time in his life, he had been touched by a lady, and for the very first time, he put down his status and wooed her. Even after she had repeatedly rejected him, he didn't show any signs of unpleasantness. In front of Huang Yueli, Li Moying seemed to have changed into another person. He was no longer that aloof, peerless genius who was illness-ridden and had been bullied from young. But he had changed into a living person filled with human emotions, and he was willing to open up his heart and accept the people in this world. After getting to know Huang Yueli for over a month, the number of times that Li Moying had smiled was much more than the total number that he had smiled over the past 20 years. Moyi couldn't imagine if Huang Yueli were to be murdered and this news reached Li Moying's ears, what would his reaction be? He would be so upset and heartbroken. From Moyi's understanding of his master, Li Moying might even go into qi deviation on the spot. Adding on to the destructive power when his illness happens, by then, perhaps the entire South Yu Kingdom would be buried as a funerary object for Huang Yueli. As Moyi thought, he started to shiver uncontrollably. He suddenly stood up from the chair and using his footworks, He used the fastest speed he would muster and sped towards the rear mountain. He knew that even if he were to die 1,000 deaths, it would not be able to make up for the mistake that he had made. He also knew that he had no face to appear before his master. But he must make use of this time to inform Li Moying of this news. No matter what, it was already too late. But what if matters had not been what he thought of? What if, based on his future mistress's wit, she had really managed to last till now? Moyi was very sure that there was 1 in 1,000 possibility that Huang Yueli was still alive. In that case, Li Moying would not give up on this vague hope, and he would definitely rush back to South Yu Kingdom to save her. You can also listen on. Mo Yi's silhouette flew at a great speed in the sect. With his protector token, he gained entry into the front and mid-mountain pathway. Those outer disciples didn't dare to stop him at all. But once he had entered a majestic stone door outside the rear mountain, he was stopped by someone. Mo Yi's face was filled with anxiety as he flashed his identity token. "Senior brothers, please let me pass. I am the commander of the Shadow Guards under Young Sect Master, and I have extremely pressing matters which I must tell the Young Sect Master. As the matter is very urgent, I'm unable to tell you more, so please let me pass." As he was saying, his footsteps didn't slow down as he attempted to rush through the stone door. However, the few disciples guarding the door refused to budge and stood in one line as they block his way. Ari, wait. Senior brother Mo Yi, don't be in such a rush. Yes, the rear mountain is where our sect's direct disciples are in closed-door cultivation. Sect Master has ordered that no one is allowed to enter and disturb their training. Right, Senior brother Mo Yi, you've just rushed back from outside, so you're probably not aware, right? In another 20 days, our sect will be having a tournament with several West Sky Regions sects, and this is the main event for our sect. If those West Sky Regions trash were to successfully defeat us, then in the next few thousand years, our sect will not be able to raise our heads in front of them. That's right. Senior brother Mo Yi, it wouldn't be good to disturb Young Sect Master at this point of time, right? Mo Yi grew more flustered as he replied, "Yes, I know what you all mean, but my matter is extremely pressing and must immediately report to Young Sect Master." He was so flustered as though his butt was on fire as his forehead was filled with sweat. However, the disciples guarding the door still refused to budge, and all of them had a perplexed expression on their faces. "Ayo, Senior brother Mo Yi, please don't make things difficult for us." Yes, Sect Master had already set strict orders that we're not allowed to let anyone go and disturb Young Sect Master and the others. If we were to let you through, Sect Master would definitely blame us for it, and we're not able to handle the blame. Yes, Senior brother Mo Yi, you're one of the trusted aides beside Young Sect Master, so you have him to cover you. So Sect Master will definitely forgive you, but for us, the ordinary disciples, we have no one to protect us, so we're not able to take up this responsibility. All of them gave their opinions and were resolute in their rejection. Mo Yi knew that they were only doing their job, and this matter was actually not their fault, nor should they be blamed. If it hadn't been for the fact that the matter that he wanted to report was regarding Huang Yueli's life and death, Mo Yi also wouldn't want to make things difficult for them. He took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. "In this case, I won't make things difficult for you. Would Senior brothers please kindly help me pass a message to Young Sect Master? If Young Sect Master wishes to meet me, then it wouldn't be your responsibility. If he's not willing, I also won't make things difficult for you all." Mo Yi settled for the next best decision as he spoke. The few of them hesitated. Mo Yi hurriedly brought out some concealed weapons and handed it over to them. Those concealed weapons were all 4th grade profound armaments and had been pushed into his hands by Huang Yueli. Although those were delicate items and it could only be used just once, but the power was extremely huge, and it was not something that these ordinary inner disciples could afford. When the few of them saw these profound armaments, their eyes shone as they didn't hesitate any longer. "All right then, your brother here will help you pass on your message. But I'll say the ugly words beforehand: if Young Sect Master is not willing to meet you, you will have to leave the rear mountain immediately, otherwise we will report this to the Sect Master. You can also listen on." Mo Yi hurriedly nodded. It should be done so. exactly like this. He was very sure that once Li Moying hears of his request to meet him, he would definitely link it to Huang Yueli getting into trouble and would meet up with him. Perhaps, Li Moying would not even continue to stay there for even a breath's time and rush out to question him. So as long as these disciples guarding the door were willing to help him pass the message, he had nothing to worry about. The few of the disciples discussed and sent out one of them who turned and entered the stone door. Moyi had just heaved a sigh of relief, but at the very next moment, a voice raised unexpectedly. "The few of you, what are you doing?" Hearing that voice, everyone froze in mid-air and the movements in their hands stopped and a terrified expression hung across their faces as they turned around. First young miss, the leader of the guards, shouted out her identity. Everyone's feel turned to jelly as they knelt onto the ground. Murong Fei was dressed in a light purple long-tailed long skirt as she gradually approached them in a swaying manner, and beside her were 4 serving maids. In each serving maid's hand was a large serving tray made out of white sandalwood, and on were several exquisite porcelain bowls, where a wonderful fragrance whiffed out from the bowls. Mo Yi's expression changed as he lowered his head to pay his respects. Murong Fei had a cold expression on her face as she swept her glance around everyone. Wherever her glance fell onto, that cold glare had already scared the door-guarding disciples until they were trembling non-stop. "You all, who can tell me what were you all saying earlier? And what were you doing?" Her voice was chilly as it bore an might and icy intent. The commander of the guards had long been scared out of his wits, but he could not afford to not answer her. First young miss, earlier this senior brother Mo Yi said he would like to meet with young sect master and he had extremely pressing matters to report. But, as what you had mentioned earlier, sect master had requested all the direct disciples to go into closed-door cultivation in the rear mountain, and besides you, no one was allowed to visit. So we were advising senior brother Mo Yi to leave. His words had pushed all the blame onto Mo Yi. The few of them were responsible disciples, and it had been because of Mo Yi's gibberish. As for them, they have no wrongdoing and attempted to cover up this matter. However, Murong Fei gave a cold snort. "Do you think I'm blind? Earlier, Mo Yi took out some stuff to bribe you. Did you think I didn't see it? Still not going to hand it up?" All of them knew they were unable to hide things any further and hurriedly took out the profound armaments that they had kept. 4th-tier concealed weapons. Not bad. Mo Yi, you're really senior brother's right-hand man, you're so generous. As for the rest of you, it's against the sect regulations to accept bribes. Murong Fei snorted. "Today after your duty is up, all of you must go to the punishment hall and receive 12 whip. If I were to see this again, don't blame me for being merciless and drive you out of the sect." The disciples guarding the door were scared out of their wits and they didn't even dare to beg for mercy as all of them kowtowed to accept their punishment. Murong Fei didn't bother about them but turned her glare to Mo Yi. "Mo Yi, I have told you before that senior brother is currently in closed-door cultivation and no one is allowed to disturb. You actually dared to come to the rear mountain behind my back, attempting to interrupt senior brother's cultivation. You dare to agree overtly but oppose in secret on purpose. What ill intentions do you have for planning such a thing? You can also listen on." Mo Yi realized the situation and hurriedly tried to explain. "First young miss, things are not what you think it is. If possible, I would definitely not interrupt master's cultivation, but I really have extremely urgent matters and must meet with master." Murong Fei was filled with disdain as she snorted. "Extremely urgent matters? Just how urgent was it? Can it be as urgent when compared to the tournament with the West Sky region? It really is that urgent. To master, this matter may be even more important than the tournament." Mo Yi replied. "First young miss, I only need a quarter of an hour, so please try to help." "Impossible." Before Mo Yi had completed his sentence, Murong Fei rejected his request. "Not to mention a quarter of an hour, even if it was a breath's time, senior brother is not able to waste this. First young miss, our master would definitely want first-hand information on this news. If my master finds out that you're obstructing me from informing him, he will definitely not be happy with you. Ari, using senior brother to suppress me?" Murong Fei swept him one glance. "Since that's the case, whatever pressing matter you have, you can tell me directly. If the matter that you say has been ascertained by me that it really is a pressing matter, then I am also not someone who is unreasonable, so just say it out. Murong Fei stared at Mo Yi as she displayed a I'm all ears look. This matter is... Mo Yi had just started off, and as the words came to his mouth, it suddenly halted. The fact that Li Moying had got to know of a young lady in the South Yu Kingdom and had unfathomably gotten engaged with her. If this matter were to be told, it was very difficult for anyone to believe it. Plus the fact that he had been tricked and someone was intending to harm Huang Yueli were just his own conjecture, and with no actual evidence, it wouldn't even more absurd. Even if others were to believe what he said, but in the eyes of the high and mighty geniuses in the sect, Huang Yueli was just a second-degree realm practitioner and her birth was just from a small country, so she wasn't compatible to be with Li Moying at all. So what if she died? Was it a big matter? For those kind of people, Li Moying's closed-door cultivation was considered as a big matter. Even if he were to say these out, no one would think his matter was pressing. Besides that, the more important thing was before this first young Miss Murong, she was one of the favored ladies who tried to woo Li Moying. If she found out that Li Moying already had a sweetheart on his mind, not only would she not help Huang Yueli, she might even harm her instead. Mo Yi reacted just in time and took a deep breath as he swallowed the words back. First young miss, please forgive me. The matter that I am going to report is confidential and Master had specially instructed that I cannot leak things out. So I must meet with my master before I can reveal it. Murong Fei's eyes turned chilly as she heard his explanation. What Mo Yi was trying to conceal was something that she was very clear about. He was worried that she would find out that Li Moying has a fiancé. She had never thought that even the number one shadow guard beside Li Moying would protect that lass to this extent. After realizing that she might have met with danger, he had rushed over anxiously. This had also verified what Murong Ni told her before. Senior brother really cared about this country lass very much. Luckily she had made a prompt decision and acted beforehand to kill that young lass in the southern region. Murong Fei narrowed her eyes and shouted loudly, "Men, Mo Yi and West Sky region's sects have collaborated and is attempting to interrupt our senior brother's closed-door cultivation, harboring evil intention. Quickly take him down and lock him up in the water prison. You can also listen on." Mo Yi gasped in shock. First young miss. You're mistaken. I really did not intentionally interrupt Master's closed-door cultivation. You're really mistaken. Murong Fei had sent someone to keep a close eye on where Mo Yi was staying, and it was through one of their reporting that she found out he had come to look for Li Moying at the rear mountain and specially came forward to stop him. Murong Fei came prepared as she brought along several fifth-degree realm inner disciples with her. Mo Yi was unable to defeat so many people alone and he really didn't want to hurt his fellow disciples so very quickly. He lost his opportunity. The few inner disciples went forward and tied him up. Mo Yi couldn't believe that Murong Fei would actually capture him. As the sect master's daughter, Murong Fei had been living under the guise as an angel in the sect. Besides that, she was very apt at pretending to be gentle and amicable, especially towards Li Moying's subordinates. So every single time, she would inquire after their welfare, acting like she is their mistress. So before today, Mo Yi's impression of her wasn't too bad at all, and he had never expected Murong Fei to use such extreme ways to prevent him from meeting Li Moying. First young miss, he tried to explain again. But Murong Fei waved her hand impatiently. You dare to defy sect master's commands and now even trying to deny. Seems that you're really not going to weep until you see the coffin. What are you guys standing there for? Still not going to bring him away? The few of them responded and dragged Mo Yi away. Murong Fei's face displayed a smile. In actual fact, she had thought that after these 6 to 7 days' duration, Huang Yueli was definitely dead by now. The reason why she was doing this was out of prudence. Only, she didn't know what Zhuo Fangping was doing at all. After he had killed that slut, he still hadn't came back to report, and not knowing where he had wandered off to, till today, he had yet to return to the sect. Men, they're really unpredictable. Although Murong Fei was filled with discontent, but she didn't give any further thought to it. From what she felt, for Zhuo Fangping to go after a second-degree realm lass, naturally there shouldn't be any accidents. Murong Fei turned back and indicated the 4 serving maids to follow up to her pace, and after that, she walked towards the rear mountain. Li Moying was still alone, quietly sitting in front of the cliff at Heaven Crate Valley practicing his swordplay. During his cultivation, the surrounding 10 miles at the rear mountain was filled with thunder-attributed profound energy, and as if it was attracted by his internal profound energy, various fluctuations and lighting were seen flashing in the sky, painting a large domain of the Reed Mountain into a dangerous thunder domain. This was Li Moying's domain. Those who had not been given permission to enter were all injured by lightning, and as for those whose cultivation levels were slightly worse off, the minute they stepped into the boundary of the thunder domain, they would be turned into scorched corpse on the spot. Li Moying quietly sat there as thunder rays could be seen indistinctly around him, casting a blue-purplish ray on his handsome face. This made him seem even powerful and mysterious. Murong Fei was just several hundred meters away from him before she felt her body not being able to take the pressure, unable to take another step forward. "Senior brother," she called out in a low tone. Li Moying's eyes suddenly opened and his eyes flashed a purple streak of lightning. That glance was extremely terrifying, causing Murong Fei to shudder uncontrollably. "It's you." Li Moying spoke icily, unable to tell the emotions in his tone. "You can also listen on." Murong Fei was intimidated by his surrounding vigor and her heartbeat almost stopped. It was with great difficulty that she regained her senses as she hastily said, "Yes, senior brother, I heard from Master that you've already been in seclusion in Heaven Crate Valley for 10 days. During this time, you didn't sleep nor rest, and I'm worried that your body would not be able to take it." Li Moying's glare was cold as he replied indifferently, "No matter. Since the tournament dare is nearing, I don't have much time to waste. But suitable rest time is necessary," Murong Fei advised. "Senior brother, I've brought along some medicinal cuisines which would be able to help in establishing your primordial spirit and replenish your profound energy, something which I had started brewing 3 days ago. Just rest for 2 hours or so and have something to eat, which will yield better results in your cultivation." Saying that, she personally took the tray and walked over. Murong Fei put the dishes on the side of a stone table and using her delicate hand which was applied with cinnabar, she lifted the spoon and cooled the medicinal cuisine into a bowl. As the South Sky region's #1 beauty and favored Lady Murong Fei, she had numerous suitors, and even though many peerless geniuses pursued her endlessly, they were unable to make her through a glance at them. But now, she had put down her status and like an ordinary serving maid, she personally served Li Moying his meals. If it had been any other men, the satisfaction in their inner hearts would probably have reached the peak and would have fainted from happiness long ago. However, Li Moying's expression still remained indifferent. He didn't receive the bowl which Murong Fei had passed to him but looked behind her back as he questioned, "I have been practicing my swordplay for 10 days already?" "That's right, senior brother. My father and the sect's junior brothers and junior sisters are all worried about you, concerned that you may forget to rest and eat, thus affecting your condition. We wondered if senior brother had gotten some comprehension from this round swordplay." Li Moying absent-mindedly replied, "I have naturally comprehended something out of this. This time, I had understood all of the sword markings left by the forebears and realized that I had broken through the last level of bottleneck. Within 3 days' time, I would be able to break through to the 7th degree realm." Seventh degree realm. Murong Fei was so shocked that her eyes widened and her hand subconsciously shivered, almost dropping the porcelain bowl in her hand. 7th degree realm. Li Moying was going to advance to the 7th degree realm. How was this possible? He was just 20 years old. Even though Li Moying was known as the #1 genius in the South Sky region and since young, every advancement he made had left everyone shocked beyond words. But this was simply atrocious. A 20-year-old 7th degree realm practitioner was unheard of in the entire Soaring Heavens continent's history. Even the current #1 expert in Soaring Heavens continent, Mu Chengying. He was 22 years old when he broke through to the 7th degree realm that year, and at that time, he had already set the record of the fastest breakthrough in Soaring Heavens continent history. As for now, Li Moying was only 20 years old. He was going to break this record to become the youngest 7th degree realm record holder in history. Didn't it mean that Li Moying had even more shocking talent than Mu Chengying? And one day, he would have the ability to hold on to the strongest power in the entire soaring heavens continent. Murong Fei's heart started pounding madly. A set of autumn watery eyes flowed onto that handsome face. The man right before her eyes, no matter if it was in terms of looks or power, were all so outstanding, incomparable to anyone else. Only this man was worthy of her, Murong Fei. You can also listen on. Murong Fei became more determined to fulfill the wish to make Li Moying her husband. She joyously said, "Senior brother, this is just too wonderful. If my father were to know about this, he would be overjoyed. With your 7th stage realm power, those West Sky region practitioners are not a match for you. You'd definitely reign in this round's tournament. Senior brother, you're really marvelous." As Murong Fei said these, her face started to flush a tinge of pink. It was only in front of such a powerful man like Li Moying did she felt that she was a delicate young lady, wishing to rely on that broad chest for protection. Murong Fei couldn't help but got a little closer. Li Moying's brow subconsciously creased together as he took a step backwards. "Senior brother?" Murong Fei didn't expect him to move away from her as she was stunned momentarily and her face expressed a sense of hurt. For a peerless beauty with such status and innate talent to give out such a pitiful expression, most men would feel remorse. However, Li Moying looked like he didn't notice anything as he spoke out. "In these days which I was in close-door cultivation, aren't there any letters delivered to me by the white-breasted falcon? Why is it that I had no letters at all?" "Huh." Murong Fei heard what he said and her heart thumped. She had previously intercepted the white-breasted falcons which Li Moying had reared, and after giving Mo Yi a forged letter, she killed that falcon for fear of the secret being found out. She thought it was done in top secrecy, but she never expected that Li Moying would recall this matter during his closed-door cultivation. She hastily replied, "No, I've never seen Senior Brother's white-breasted falcon fly back at all. If it was Senior Brother's letters, no one in the sect would dare to intercept it, so why would you not receive it?" "That's weird." Li Moying's dashing eyebrows creased slightly. "It's been 10 days, how could it be that there's no news at all?" Murong Fei's face turned palely white. She had been wondering why would Li Moying suddenly ask about a flying magical beast whose only task was to deliver letters. So he was indeed waiting for news from South Yu Kingdom, for that wretched lass's letter. Normally when Li Moying went out for training, he might not return for several months, so he won't even take the extra step to send a letter to the sect, much less write a letter to her, Murong Fei. But now, it had been only 10 days since he received that lass's news, and Li Moying was already feeling uncomfortable, even actively asking on his own. Murong Fei was feeling so jealous that her hands were trembling. However, she didn't dare expose herself and could only forcefully suppress the anger within her, pretending to be unaware. "Senior brother, whose letter are you waiting for? Do you need me to pass down the message that once there is any news of your falcon flying back into the mountains, I'll let them to report to you immediately?" Li Moying shook his head. "Forget it, there's no need." He didn't notice Murong Fei's strange attitude but had already immersed into his own thoughts. Why was there no news from his Leah for such a long time? Surely she couldn't have gotten into trouble, right? But Leah had Mo Yi by her side, a practitioner who was at 5th stage realm peak. In a place like South Yu Kingdom, it was absolutely an incredible source of power, so basically there shouldn't be any trouble. Could it be that that conscienceless lass refused to write him any letters? That was highly possible. After all, he had written so many letters to Leah, but she had never written back any letters to him personally. You can also listen on. All news regarding her would be penned down and sent over by Mo Yi. Thinking of this, Li Moying became displeased. This lass. She really had no conscience. He had noted all of these down in his heart. She dared to treat him in this way. After he had settled the sect's matters and finally found her, he would absolutely punish her severely. At least, he had to punish her to offer him kisses. At least 100 times. Li Moying was still considering in his thoughts as the sides of his lips curled into a smile. Speaking of this, he had not intended to waste so much time in closed-door cultivation in the sect. He preferred to stay by Huang Yueli's side and rush back to attend the tournament just a few days before it started. But after the sect master had heard about his engagement in South Yu Kingdom, he had already spoken to him personally once. The sect master was naturally not satisfied with Huang Yueli. A plausible but fallacious 6th-grade talent, not of outstanding birth, was simply incompatible with him. Sect master even suggested for him to consider marrying Murong Fei as his lawful wife and for Huang Yueli to be a concubine instead. But Li Moying was extremely firm in his stance that if he was unable to marry Huang Yueli as his wife, he would choose to leave the sect. In this way, sect master had no choice but to give way, telling him that if he were to successfully annihilate the West Sky region's sects and helped him to establish reputation for their sect, then he would agree to let Huang Yueli join their sect and agree to their marriage. Li Moying didn't care if the people in the sect minded or not. As for whether they agree or not, it wasn't of concern to him. But as sect master Murong had given him a second chance in life, if he was able to get his master's blessings, he would feel overjoyed. And it was just because of this which was why he suppressed the urge to stay beside Huang Yueli, forcing himself to go into close-door cultivation at the rear mountain. Luckily, the tournament was about to start soon and he had only needed to settle the matters here before he could run off to South Yu Kingdom Open and aboveboard to abduct that little lass back to the sect. Thereafter, they would get along day and night, not leaving each other's sight. Li Moying had been imagining their intimacy between the both of them as his smile grew deeper. His usually aloof and cold as ice handsome looks looked like it was snow melting, giving out a gentle expression which made his beautiful facial features add a few charismatic allure. Murong Fei was stunned by this as her eyes was glued onto Li Moying's face. Li Moying noticed her sight and instantly felt displeased. He didn't know why whenever Leah stared at him, he only felt a sense of excitement as his entire body started to become heated, wishing to hold that lass into his embrace, to melt into his blood and bones, to love her dearly. But if other women's sight fell onto him, it only made him feel like vomiting. Li Moying frowned. "All right, I want to continue with my closed-door cultivation. Junior sister, please leave." But senior brother, Murong Fei, wanted to add on something. However, Li Moying had already walked towards the cliff, ignore her existence. Murong Fei could only turn around and leave in hatred. She looked at those cuisine which she had painstakingly cooked but yet been touched as her heart wallowed in self-pity and jealousy, throwing those dishes onto the ground in anger. That slut, she actually hooked senior brother's heart away. Too bad, no matter how good your foxy skills are, what use is there? Aren't you just a dead person now? You can also listen on. Little courtyard in the forest. It had been 3 days since the medicinal bath incident where Liu Buyan had left in anger. Huang Yueli started to think that since Liu Buyan was that angry, he might not continue with her treatment, leave her with an existing injury on top of another new injury and chase her out for her to survive on her own. But the very next day morning, 2 serving maids appeared on time at her room and not only did they help her with her daily activities, they also prepared the second day's medicinal bath. I didn't expect this. Although Liu Buyan's temper had turned strange but his principle towards treatment for patients had not changed at all. Huang Yueli's lips curled upwards as she had no qualms about accepting the pills he had supplied. Anyway, she had already ruffled Liu Buyan's feathers, so no matter how worried she was wouldn't change anything. So she might as well take it easy. What she should do now was to get herself healed before she could consider the next step to take. Just like that, another 3 days passed. It was until the 3rd day's afternoon when a serving maid suddenly walked in to report. "Miss Bai, Master invites you to the courtyard for a while. He's waiting for you at Variance Blossom's pavilion." "Oh, really?" I thought. After he had through such a huge temper, he wouldn't want to see me for the rest of his life. Huang Yueli stretched her lazy waist as she walked outdoors to look for Liu Buyan. The courtyard that Liu Buyan had been living in seclusion was not large, but the inner structures were extremely exquisite. All the sceneries had been designed meticulously and there were plenty of rare flowers and plants which were not found in South Yu Kingdom planted here. It could be said that for every one step you'd see one scenery, 4 seasons in a year could be found here, and it was extremely beautiful. Besides that, the entire hill slope at the back of the courtyard was transformed into a medical farm, where many rare and high-quality medical herbs were planted. Any medical plant from the medical farm could be auctioned off in the Sky Emperor City for at a rocket-high price. But Liu Buyan seemed to use these herbs to brew soup daily or to feed his pets. Such extravagant consumption made Huang Yueli's eyebrow twitch. His worthy of being the #1 divine doctor in Soaring Heaven's continent, rich and overbearing, even a spendthrift than her. Walking to where the serving maid mentioned the location of the Variance Blossoms Pavilion was, Huang Yueli raised her head as she saw Liu Buyan inclined right in front of her, sitting in the pavilion. As the gentle breeze blew past, his white robe fluttered. On the exquisite side of his face, a sense of loneliness was revealed. His eyelids drooped slightly, but his vision of sight was aloof, as though he was looking at something inside his hand. "Divine Dr. Liu." Huang Yueli called him from afar and walked over. Liu Buyan stared blankly for a while, and his right hand instinctively withdrew and kept the item in his hand into his sleeve. Huang Yueli was too far away and Liu Buyan's action was too fast. So she had only took a glance from afar, not seeing clearly what he had in his hands was. She could only see that item giving out dazzling rainbow rays under the sunlight. That dazzling ray, although was just an instance, had attracted her attention. In her memory, only one stone had such radiant glow. Rainbow Spirit Crystal. This was an extremely rare 9th grade material, and in the entire Soaring Heavens continent, there were only 7 pieces. Every piece could clearly tell their history. Rainbow Spirit Crystal's effect could greatly amplify the recovery rate of one's profound energy, and owning one piece of Rainbow Spirit Crystal would ensure the profound energy being regenerated. In times of a long battle, it was a magic tool which would determine the winner or loser. You can also listen on. But the Rainbow Spirit Crystal was the most outstanding of all. Not only did it have a powerful effect, also, that exceedingly dazzling radiance. The Rainbow Spirit Crystal had an exquisite scintillation, a beautiful array of 7 different colors interchanged continuously within the piece of small crystal, as though a stream of rainbow had been confined in the crystal, so enchantingly beautiful until one could not move one's sight away from it. For female practitioners, Rainbow Spirit Crystal's charm was simply irresistible. Ordinary gems could only make a woman feel fortunate. The strong recovery effect in combination with the indescribable beauty of the spirit crystal was more than enough to get a lady's heart hooked. In her previous life, Huang Yueli also longed to own a piece of Rainbow Spirit Crystal. But due to the sparsity of the Rainbow Spirit Crystal, every piece was a valued treasure in some of Soaring Heaven's continent's top powerhouses. Even though Huang Yueli was the #1 armament master in the continent that year, she was unable to make those powerhouses give up that Rainbow Spirit Crystal. She was at a loss, but after thinking of many ideas, she was still unable to get one piece. Just as she was about to give up, during one of her birthday, Mu Chengying suddenly brought her to a mythical paradise and mysteriously brought out a bracelet hidden behind him. Huang Yueli looked carefully, overwhelmed with surprise and joy, and couldn't speak properly for quite a while, because what Mu Chengying had given her was a bracelet made out of Rainbow Spirit Crystal. It had always been something that she wanted but was unable to get it. Where did you get this from? You don't need to bother about this. This is for you, do you like it? Mu Chengying smiled calmly as he avoided her question. Yet Huang Yueli noticed that something was amiss, something's not right. This is such a big piece of Rainbow Spirit Crystal. This piece belongs to Beam Moon Palace. How did you get them to give up this to you? They didn't agree to the exchange when I said I'd refine 10 pieces of 9-grade upper-level profound armaments for them. I naturally have my own ways. You only need to answer me, do you like it or not? Mu Chengying gradually got closer to her as he whispered gently beside her ear. Huang Yueli's face flushed into a scarlet red and mumbled softly, I like. Subsequently, she found out that in order for Mu Chengying to obtain this Rainbow Spirit Crystal, he had agreed to a shockingly major task, almost paying it with his life in order to give her this surprise. And on her birthday, when Mu Chengying had rushed over, the injuries on his body had yet to recover fully. Huang Yueli looked at the Rainbow Spirit Crystal in Liu Buyan's eyes, and memories from her past life started to flow back into her. She wondered if the bracelet had exploded together along with her. If that Rainbow Spirit Crystal were to be broken into smithereens, it would really be a waste. If it hadn't been broken into pieces, Then in whose hands were it in now? Huang Yueli had been indulging in flights of fancy when Liu Buyan turned around and looked at her. You're really slow. You've gotten accustomed to staying here just after a few days, eh? Huang Yueli replied, Yes, I am really grateful to Divine Dr. Liu for your warm-hearted reception and for treating my injuries. How can I ever repay you for your gratitude? These words were coming from the bottom of her heart because if it wasn't for Liu Buyan, she would have been dead by now. So she was still grateful to him. Liu Buyan threw her a glance and spoke in a neither cold nor warm tone, It looks to me that you're already used to the lifestyle. These few days, you'd either eat or sleep, no different from a pig. If you were to say you're not used to it, who would believe you? You can also listen on. The corners of Huang Yueli's mouth twitched, feeling that the gratitude that she had earlier had vanished by half. This really was. Ivory would not sprout from a dog's mouth. How was she to reply to this? However, Liu Buyan didn't expect her to reply as he continued talking. After freeloading for so long and wasting so many of my valuable herbs, don't tell me you're just intending to take advantage of me. Haven't you ever considered how you should repay me? Huang Yueli went into a blank. To repay a debt naturally was entirely justified. But when she looked to Liu Buyan in her past life for treatment, she had never paid him any compensation, so, subconsciously, she had missed out on this. It was after Liu Buyan's reminder that she suddenly recalled that her identity was no longer the same as her past life, so naturally Liu Buyan would not let her take advantage of him for nothing. She hastily added, Of course I know about this reasoning and I will definitely repay you. But Divine Dr. Liu, you're the #1 divine doctor in the continent. Whatever you want, you'd already have it, whereas I'm only a second-stage realm practitioner, so I really don't know what compensation I can give you in order to satisfy you. If Divine Dr. Liu, you have anything that you want, please let me know and I'll send it over with my 2 hands. Really? That's great. You have something that I'm interested in. Liu Buyan raised his brow and on his charming face, he gave out a lazy smile as his gaze was fixated on Huang Yueli. That expression seemed to be sizing up the item he had in his hands. Huang Yueli felt uncomfortable by his gaze as she subconsciously took a step backward. Divine Dr. Liu, you, please go ahead and speak your mind. Liu Buyan sat up straight and looking at her, he opened his mouth and said, Accompany me for 3 months. What? Huang Yueli didn't expect him to say this and her eyes opened wide. Liu Buyan ill-intentionally curled the corners of his lips as his smile looked slightly evil. Need me to make things clearer? Accompany me for 3 months. During this period, no matter what I ask you to do, you're not allowed to reject and you must follow what I tell you to do. But, Huang Yueli frowned, why do you need me to accompany you? Liu Buyan gave a soft snigger as he suddenly stood up. He looked slightly skinny dressed in the white robe when he was sitting down, but when he stood up, he revealed a well-built muscular body. Step by step, he got closer to Huang Yueli, almost to the point of sticking to her before he stopped. To want you to accompany me, naturally because I have some interest in you, don't you understand? Are you really that pure? Huh? Liu Buyan stuck close to her ear as he blew some air towards her ear lobes, intentionally making things sound extremely ambiguous. Huang Yueli creased her eyebrows sensitively as she turned her head towards one side. Liu Buyan held up her chin and continued to tease her. Why? You've already stripped and bathed in front of me, so why are you pretending to be reserved now? My meaning, you should be very clear, isn't it? He purposely said this, thinking that this little lass might just jump in shock the very next moment and treat him like a pervert, flying into a rage out of humiliation, or perhaps, she was smitten by his charm and shyly rejecting, not daring to accept his request directly. However, what was unexpected was, there's no problem. Agreeing to your request, but 3 months is simply too long. I can only afford to stay here for 7 days. You can also listen on. What? This time, the person who was in shock was Liu Buyan. He lowered his head to take a look at Huang Yueli's expression, which did not reflect the shock or embarrassment which he had anticipated. On the contrary, her expression was calm and her intonation when she spoke was stable, as though her emotions were not affected by him one bit, and what they were conversing in was something very ordinary. Liu Buyan frowned as he had mentioned the same request to quite a number of young ladies. But this was the first time that anyone had agreed so readily, as though she didn't worry about her chastity at all. Upon hearing such a request, normal ladies would understand what he wanted to derive from their bodies, so they would hesitate for quite some time before they agree to it. What on earth was this young lass thinking of? In fact, Huang Yueli had so readily agreed was naturally due to her own reasoning. During her past life when she was still alive, Liu Buyan would love to let the ladies around him accompany him for some time. Initially, Huang Yueli viewed his character with disdain, feeling that he was using the treatment as an excuse to coerce the ladies. Subsequently, after one incident, she realized that Liu Buyan had asked the young lady to stay by his side, but he had not done anything scandalous to them, only treating them like a doll, requesting them to dress according to his wishes and thereafter accompanying him to have his meal or engage in a conversation. Although she did not know why the number one divine doctor would have such a strange hobby, but this was nothing unacceptable. If it was just acting like a doll which only accompanied to eat or conversed and not sleep together, and yet would be able to repay him for saving her life, then this was just a simple task. Only, 3 months to her was simply too long. Liu Buyan frowned as he exclaimed, "Are you joking? 7 days? The gratitude towards you is only worth 7 days. I'm telling you, the number who wishes to climb onto my bed starts from northern icefields all the way to Dark Moon Forest. The fact that I've chosen you is your honor. You still dare to bargain?" Huang Yueli's lips twitched. The things he said were really wicked. If she hadn't known about his character, she would probably had thought he was a big pervert. Huang Yueli rolled her eyes at him as she said, 3 months was initially possible, but I have something extremely important to do, so latest by the end of 7 days, I must leave this place. If you are willing, I can use money or profound armament or similar items to pay for the remaining time, or I can repay back after I have completed my business. Liu Buyan inquired, "What business could you possibly have?" "I must rush to Sky Cloud City within 20 days' time. The exact reason, I'm sorry for not being able to reveal it. Anyway, when time is up, I absolutely must leave." 20 days later was the enrollment date for various academies. In order to reach Sky Cloud City by foot, judging on her speed, she will need 10 over days for the entire journey. So staying here for 7 days was her limit. Otherwise she would not be able to meet with the deadline for Celestial Light Academy's enrollment. Liu Buyan stared at her for a moment and finally nodded. "All right, but in this 7 days, you must be available anytime and not defy any of my request." "All right, it's a deal." Huang Yueli nodded. Deal. Once the agreement had been met, Liu Buyan stood up and let go of Huang Yueli. He turned around and pointed on the set of clothes on the stone table and said to her, "Now, the first order is for you to change into this dress. You can also listen on." Huang Yueli just realized that on the stone table beside Liu Buyan laid an exquisite set of clothing. That was a sakura-colored puffy-sleeved flowing dress. On the hem of the sleeve and skirt were a mix of exquisite embroidery patterns made with golden thread. The layering skirt hems looked like petals from a blooming flower. Upon seeing this dress, Huang Yueli's eyes shone. In her past life, she had been especially fond of the puffy-sleeved long flowy dress, and almost all of her dresses were of the similar style. She was also the one to lead the trend in this kind of petal-hemmed design. During that time, as a famed peerless beauty in soaring heaven's continent who loves this design, it had caused numerous young ladies to follow suit in dressing up like her. Which was why until today, the flowy dress style remained as a display of soaring heaven's continent's female practitioners manifesting their identity. The more arrogant, self-important and outstanding innate talent that a young lady had, the more she enjoyed dressing up in this manner. And the dress that Liu Buyan had brought out had exceptionally exquisite embroidery with fine workmanship. So even a young lady like Huang Yueli, who had high expectations, instantly fell in love with this. She delightfully took over the dress and replied, "No problem. I'll go back and change right now, just you wait." And she ran off back to her room in high spirits. Initially she was still worried if Liu Buyan's aesthetic appreciate would be too exotic. If he had made her dress up like a laughable country girl, Then her reputation as the continent's #1 armament master would be thrown away cleanly. But now this job was so easy. She only needed to accompany him to eat and chat, and there's also such a beautiful dress to wear, so it was simply too simple and too worthwhile. Okay. Huang Yueli quickly changed her clothes and returned to the pavilion. Liu Buyan had been waiting in the pavilion. A jug of wine and 2 wine glass appeared on the stone table, and he held up his glass, pouring and drinking by himself. When he heard her approaching, Liu Buyan turned around. The next second, his eyes opened wide and his gaze was filled with unconcealable admiration. He was totally mesmerized. The young lady before his eyes was dressed in a flowing cloud-like dress. Sakura color complemented her fair skin, which made it look even more tender, as though a slight pinch would make water flow out. The layers on the long dress flowed downwards like blooming petals. When she moved with quick, light steps, the layers of hem would sway along, moving up and down. Reflecting against the rays of the sunset, she looked so beautiful, like an angel who had mistakenly descended into the mortal land. Liu Buyan's eyes were fixated on her. Cough cough, do I really look so mesmerizing? Huang Yueli's lips curled as she couldn't help but feel delighted. Although Liu Buyan wasn't the type of men who she liked, but to be able to mesmerize such a handsome man till his eyes was unable to move away, it was some sort of achievement. Liu Buyan finally found his senses, and with a light cough, just so, I guess. Compared to that person, you still got a long way to go. Huang Yueli blinked her eyes, not seemingly hearing him clearly. Who am I still far away from? Liu Buyan replied, nothing, you heard wrongly. Huang Yueli, she really heard Liu Buyan said something, but why did he change his words in a blink of an eye and not admit what he said? Something smelled fishy. Liu Buyan stared at her a little longer and took out a jade hairpin from his sleeve. Huang Yueli looked closely and found that this jade hairpin's design showing a phoenix extending its wings. The carving was remarkably imitated to perfection, and on the position of the phoenix's eyes, inlaid a rainbow spirit crystal. Compared to her previous life's bracelet, this rainbow spirit crystal was naturally much smaller. But just this small piece of jewel was already enough to purchase 17 or 18 small countries. You can also listen on. So when she was here earlier, the item that Liu Buyan was playing around with was this jade hairpin. As Huang Yueli's gaze grazed past the hairpin, she couldn't help but be attracted to it, so she took a few more glances at it. It was undeniable that Liu Buyan's aesthetics view was rather outstanding. Just from the intricate carving, design, color from this jade hairpin, every aspect was splendid and magnificent, unable to find any flaw from it. Although that rainbow spirit crystal was small, but it had the magical touch of livening the phoenix, making it look like it was about to spread its wings and fly. More importantly, she recalled that there was no rainbow spirit crystals which were inlaid in any jade hairpin. So this proved that this hairpin was specially forged to become the carrier of the rainbow spirit crystal. She wondered if this was the work of Liu Buyan. Huang Yueli's eyes shone after she saw the hairpin, and Liu Buyan suddenly spoke out, "What's the matter? Feel that this is pretty. Pretty. It's very beautiful." Huang Yueli naturally told the truth and gave her praises unselfishly. "The carving is really marvelous. I wonder which outstanding craftsman had forged such a beautiful jade hairpin. But only this fine workmanship is able to match the rainbow spirit crystal inlaid in the hairpin. You know this is the rainbow spirit crystal?" Liu Buyan raised his eyebrows. About this, Huang Yueli suddenly realized that she had completely forgotten about her identity and had misspoken. After all, an item like the rainbow spirit crystal was unheard of even among many 5th or 6th stage realm practitioners. She hurriedly found an excuse. "I had seen a drawing in one of the books noting down the continent's treasures, and I'm not really sure if this is it. Don't tell me it really is the rainbow spirit crystal?" Liu Buyan didn't investigate further and only took a glance at her before passing the jade hairpin over. "Put this on and let me take a look." Huang Yueli was stunned as she thought she had heard him wrongly. Was there something wrong with Liu Buyan's brain? He actually passed such a valuable spirit crystal jade hairpin so casually to a stranger for her to wear. For such grade of treasure, Even if it was one of the large sects in the Sky Emperor city, it would be the most precious among all the treasures, so they wouldn't let anyone take a single glance at it. He simply just brought it out like this. Wasn't he just too spendthrift? Huang Yueli couldn't help but creased her eyebrows as she tried hard to recall. Could it be that pill masters were much richer than armament masters? When she received the rainbow spirit crystal bracelet in her past life, as it was very valuable, she had always kept it carefully. Who would act like Liu Buyan in such a rich and imposing way? Liu Buyan saw her blank look as a smile slowly formed. Why are you in a daze? I asked you to put it on, didn't you hear me? TSK, to have a hearing deficiency at such a young age, or you just simply don't understand human language? He was the one who wasn't talking human language. Since Liu Buyan was acting like a tycoon, then why should she feel heartache for him? Huang Yueli rolled her eyes at him as she received the Phoenix Jade hairpin and put it in a slanted angle into her hair. She had always been light with her fingers and had been deft in making herself look pretty. Just a few movements of her wrists and she had already placed the jade hairpin into her jet black, soft hair, which was tied up into a bun as she revealed a fair and elaborate face. A few strands of fringe hung down from the corners of her forehead, adding on some charm. And along with the jade hairpin which was stuck in her flowing black hair, the shimmer of that rainbow spirit crystal in the phoenix's eyes, it made her look like a fairy that had descended from the heavens. You can also listen on. Liu Buyan stared intently at the young lady in front of him and felt his heart pounding wildly. Many years ago, that indescribable feeling when he met that young lady started surging back into him. Two alike. Really, two alike. Even though the young lady in front of him wasn't particularly beautiful, and as compared to that gorgeous, peerless beauty in his memory, she was just too ordinary and their looks were not alike in any sense. But the temperament in the both of them were indeed very alike. That person and her were the same, they were both suitable to wear the similar styled dress. That person and her were the same, under the reflection of the rainbow spirit crystal. Their charm became even more mesmerizing. Even the posture on how she tie up their hair was so similar to that person. The person in his memory had on numerous times, casually took a hairpin and easily tied her hair up in a few moves after a battle. Her fine black hair had been transformed easily into a fresh and charming style. For that one moment, Liu Buyan had thought that the person right before his eyes was that person whom he had known more than a decade ago, the one whose fame was known throughout the entire soaring heavens continent's #1 armament master, #1 beauty, Huang Yuel. Divine Dr. Liu, what are you thinking about? Huang Yueli interrupted his thoughts. Originally, she didn't mind such a peerless handsome man to be smitten with her. But after some time, she felt something was wrong and the way Liu Buyan looked at her was really weird, as though he was going to see through her. Surely he couldn't be thinking of something filthy, right? Upon hearing Huang Yueli's voice, Liu Buyan snapped out of his thoughts. Oh, nothing. I was just saying, the jade hairpin on you looks barely manageable. Liu Buyan gave an evil smile, trying to hide his shock, and said unforgivingly. What was he thinking about earlier? Huang Yueli was already dead. Not only was she dead, even her soul had completely vanished. Forever and ever, she would never appear again. The little lass in front of him was indeed someone whom he had seen in so many years, most alike to Huang Yueli. For many years, he had lots of beauties accompany him, and every single one had a certain part which resembled the Huang Yueli he remembered over a decade ago. For example, some were the eyes, others were mouth, and some others were her figure. As long as there was something similar, he would think of ways to make that person stay and accompany him for a period of time. Only, although those people resembled her, but they were unable to display Huang Yueli's indescribable temperament. She was just that extraordinary, and no one even had 1% of her charm. Only this young lass in front of him. She obviously didn't look like her, but she was able to display 80% of the #1 beauty's charm. Liu Buyan sighed gently as he showed signs of melancholy. However, no matter how alike she was, it was only a resemblance. He really shouldn't be captivated by just a mere illusionary delusion. Huang Yueli was ridiculed by him and momentarily felt discontented as she rolled her eyes at him and said, barely manageable. Then why did you stare at me for half a day for? TSK, such duplicity. Liu Buyan retorted, I think. Aren't you too narcissi? I'm only looking at the jade hairpin that I carved myself. As for you, you're just a mannequin that is displaying my jade hairpin only. What's there for me to look at? Huang Yueli's face turned green. This was an insult, absolutely a naked insult. She pouted her lips and replied, I really can't tell, you actually know how to carve. And your carving is so. You've spent quite an effort, isn't it? Could it be that you're preparing to give this present to the girl of your dreams? You can also listen on. Huang Yueli's original intent was to poke fun at him. Since he already had someone whom he liked, he still dared to stare at the other ladies. This was considered as emotional extramarital affair. But who knew, when Liu Buyan heard what she said, his face sank immediately as his gaze turned cold. Regarding my matters, you better not ask too much. According to our agreement, you only need to listen to my requests obediently. If I were to hear such questions again, be careful that I chop you up into minced meat to fertilize my backyard's medical farm. He abruptly had a change of attitude. Earlier that wicked smile was still hanging on his lips, but now his lips were tightly pursed together and the tone that he used was also filled with a stern attitude from someone who had assumed a top position. Huang Yueli was slightly surprised and with an O sound with a frightened expression, and she stopped asking further. However, although she didn't say anything, she was suspicious within her heart. Speaking of this, to carve a jade hairpin by hand, it was definitely to give to a lady, so does that mean Liu Buyan really had a lady that he liked? But in her previous life, she didn't seem to have heard him mentioning about such a person, so could she have sprouted out in the past decade? What sort of person was she? The amount of women who surrounded Liu Buyan were numerous, and although he was all smiles with them, but in actual fact, he didn't fancy anyone at all. To be able to be fancied by Liu Buyan, even to the extent of him carving a jewelry piece for her, what sort of person was she? To tell the truth, she was really a little, no, extremely curious. Only, now it seemed impossible to ask the question. In the far end of the sect, on the path of the rear mountain, a team of guards were escorting Moyi along the mountain path, towards the direction of the water prison. However, these inner disciples had tied up his hands and were not rough with him. As the inner discipled were merely 1 to 200 people and Moyi was one of them. As everyone were met frequently, so they had some sort of friendly relationship. Besides that, Moyi was also young sect master's trusted aide, so there's no guarantee that when the young sect master became the sect master, he might become the sect's important elder. So for such a person, not many were willing to offend him. The only problem was as this was eldest young Miss Order, so they didn't dare not to disobey. Those disciples who were more familiar to Moyi couldn't help but advised, Senior Brother Moyi, look at yourself, what are you tormenting yourself for? Since eldest young Miss doesn't allow you to enter the rear mountain, then don't go. Why go against her? Once you've gone into the water prison, the water inside are water underground which had been frozen for 1,000 years. If you're inside for too long, it will hurt your meridians and affect your cultivation. It's simply not worth it. Moyi heaved a big sigh and replied, you guys don't understand. I really have a very important matter, and if Master comes out of closed door and finds out that I didn't report to him on time, he will fly into a rage. Really? What matter could it be that is more important than the West Sky Region Sect's tournament? Yes, you didn't deliberately not report this, but you were stopped by eldest young Miss. So just push the blame to her because this wasn't your fault in the first place. Young sect master trusts you so much so he won't put the blame on you. The crowd started giving words of advice of their own. Moyi shook his head and didn't rebuke them, as though he was convinced by them. Moyi's cultivation was much higher by the rest of them by several times, and they had barely won by numbers. So in the beginning, everyone guarded against him. But after walking such a long distance, Moyi didn't seem to show any signs of resistance and even started to chat with them, so everyone started to let down their guard. You can also listen on. Everyone believed that Moyi had always been loyal to the sect and would quietly accept the punishment that eldest young Miss had meted out, not daring to resist. In this way, some inner disciples had let down their guard and their minds gradually wandered off. Moyi had been silently observing the performance of the team which was escorting him and found a number of them were rather relaxed. He winced his eyes, and once a few of them walked past a corner, he rose in revolt suddenly. He retrieved 2 pieces of thunder flame balls and smog bombs which Huang Yueli had passed to him some time ago and threw it among the crowd, taking them by surprise. Damn it! What's the situation? Something caught fire? Oh my god, why can't I see clearly? Everyone take caution and don't beat up our own people. No one had expected that an explosion would happen right next to them, and because the effect of Huang Yueli's smog bomb was so great that several layers were superimposed together and instantly, thick smoke covered the surroundings and it was practically impossible to see clearly each person's position. In the midst of the confusion, Moyi used his soaring heavens sword to cut loose the ropes, took the opportunity when everyone were running about everywhere and extended his fastest speed to escape. He didn't have much time. Once the smog dissipated, they would discovered that he had escaped. By then, this would have been reported to Murong Fei and she would definitely find a chance to capture him again. What's more, she would have figured out that he would have gone to look for Li Moying and would set up enough people to patrol around the rear mountain. In this way, he would not even hope to see a glimpse of Li Moying. This was why Moyi didn't waste any time, and on the first moment, he ran towards the rear mountain. This time, he didn't dare to enter from the main door, but choose to sneak in via the small path in the middle of the mountain. Moyi knew that the location which Li Moying had his closed-door cultivation would always be at the Sword Cliff at Heaven Crate Valley, so he ran towards that direction directly. However, the rear mountain was filled with various mechanisms. He had only ran a short distance when he stepped on one of them. Pew pew was heard and a row of poison arrows were shot out, which Moyi easily avoided. The only problem was avoiding the arrows were easy, but after the mechanisms were activated, it let out a ear-piercing sound and the surrounding guards were all attracted by it. Who is that? Who's there? Quickly, men, someone has snuck into the rear mountain. The guards were yelling and shouting as they surrounded the location where Moyi was. Moyi clenched his teeth, ignoring them and continuing to speed towards his destination. The more mechanisms he activated, the more chaos he attracted, and the number of guards pursuing him had increased. Some of them had even recognized him. But the distance to Heaven Crate Valley was nearing. Stop right here. Moyi, how dare you? You actually defied my orders and escaped from the water prison. Even Murong Fei pursued him and yelled out sternly, stop right there now. However, Moyi had already reached the boundary of Heaven Crate Valley, and from afar, he could see a lightning-struck thunder field. He did not dare to hesitate and increased his speed once more as he sped towards the raging thunder and lightning field. Stop. You think that once you enter Heaven Crate Valley, I won't dare to capture you? The distance between the both of them was merely 100 meters or lesser, and Murong Fei rushed into the boundary of the thunder field. At the same time, she shot an sharp, icy arrow with shocking might towards the back of Moyi. Moyi's speed had already been raised to the maximum, but the icy arrow's speed was much faster. The icy arrow was about to penetrate his body. At this very moment, in Heaven Crate Valley, a shocking loud boom reverberated. Rumbably tilde 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 tilde. A flash of bluish-purple colored lighting was seen in the sky. You can also listen on. It was as though in that instant that this lightning bolt illuminated the entire sect. No matter if it was the front or rear mountain, everything was shrouded by a blinding flash. Immediately after, thunder in the sky seemed to be attracted by this bolt of light as various lightnings tore the sky apart and came crashing down towards Heaven Crate Valley. The two sets of lights combined together as one, as though a sharp sword, made a split between heaven and earth. The sizzling sound from the lightning reverberated continuously in the sky, and the radiance grew brighter, so bright that others were not able to open their eyes, and some of them had even lost their sight because of it. The minute the bolt of lightning split apart was the exact instance when Moyi rushed into the thunder field. Luckily it negated Murong Fei's attack, and he had already taken precautionary actions by using his profound energy to encapsulate the important parts of his body. Even so, he was still unable to go against such a savage thunder, and at the moment where lightning flashed past, he had been thrown outwards, throwing up blood in mid-air. Yet, he was already considered lucky. Murong Fei was much worse off. She had been pursuing Mo Yi and throwing out attacks, so she had not once even considered defense. During the moment when thunder flashed past, her body was practically unprotected, and when lightning penetrated her body, it had injured all her internal organ. At the same time, she had been using the icy arrows to pursue Mo Yi, so the profound energy displayed were forced back into her dantian by the powerful thunder-attributed profound energy, causing her qi and blood to be in turmoil and her meridians shatter. Murong Fei made an oof sound when she had been struck by lightning on the head as she turned black. Her skin was completely burnt and had split open, displaying a crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. Following that, she crashed heavily onto the ground, unable to move a single bit. Mo Yi saw the state that Murong Fei was in and was shocked out of his mind. Only, he recalled his mission and clutching onto his chest, he forced himself to stand up and move on. Not far away, after the strongest explosion of raging thunder in Heaven Crate Valley had erupted, it was gradually quelling down, but the intensity of the surrounding thunderfield was much stronger by 1-fold as compared to when he just arrived. Mo Yi looked at the lightning-filled scenario in front of his eyes in shock and mumbled to himself, "It can't be? Don't tell me. Master had just successfully breakthrough? He had advanced to the 7th stage realm? Does he need to be so abnormal? He's just 20 years old." As the commander of Li Moying's shadow guards, Mo Yi had always been impressed by his master's power. But every single time Li Moying would give him an even astonishing performance. And every single time, it was refreshing his understanding of him. Like this round, a 20-year-old attaining 7th stage realm, what heaven-defying rhythm was this? He sighed for a moment and forced himself to adjust his remaining profound energy. Bearing with the pain that he suffered when he was struck by thunder, he surged on towards Heaven Crate Valley. Even though he knew Li Moying had just advanced and it was necessary to continue staying in closed-door cultivation to stabilize his foundation, but he couldn't help but had to interrupt his master, because during the time when Li Moying was in the Dark Moon Forest, he had already used his actions to tell him that Huang Yueli's life was much more important than his. Mo Yi had only walked for 10 meters when he felt the huge pressure. The internal region of the thunder field's intensity had gone beyond his imagination. To be so far away from the center, he was unable to hold on any longer. Who dares to barge into my thunder field? To disturb my cultivation? At this moment, a chillingly stern voice echoed from above his head. You can also listen on. Master. When Mo Yi heard this voice, he was so overjoyed that he almost cried. After experiencing so much setbacks and obstructions, he finally met Li Moying himself. Upon hearing Mo Yi's voice, Li Moying went into a blank momentarily, and immediately following that, the thunder field disappeared and Li Moying's silhouette appeared in a flash, right in front of Mo Yi. Why are you here? Where's Leah? Did she come back to the sect with you? No. Master. The sweat on Mo Yi's head swooshed down all at once as he knelt down and sprawled onto the ground, not daring to lift his head up. Master, I deserve to die 1,000 times. I've fallen into someone's scheme. Third miss, her whereabouts is unknown. What? Li Moying's eyes turned extremely wide as his gaze was like electricity as it shot towards Mo Yi, seemingly piercing through him. What's going on? What exactly happened? Didn't I tell you to stay by her side, and not to leave her for even one step? I have been foolish and had been tricked by others. Even though Mo Yi was crouching on the ground, he could feel the piercing and emotionless pressurizing look as his body uncontrollably trembled. He hurriedly related the entire story, from the forged letter to how he hurried back to the sect, and how he met with different obstacles and was unable to meet Li Moying in the process. This is what had happened. It had been 6 to 7 days since I left Third Miss, and if someone had ill intentions towards her, they would probably have carried out their evil scheme. Before Mo Yi finished his sentence, he heard a loud bam sound as a bolt of lightning flashed past and a part of the mountain cliff was split apart by Li Moying on the spot. Numerous stray rocks started tumbling downwards and many of it hit against Mo Yi directly, but he didn't dare to move, nor could he move. Because it was indeed due to his negligence which caused Huang Yueli to meet with danger, so he absolutely deserved to die. Li Moying spoke in a downcast and anguished voice. I remember that I had once told you that you're alive because Third Miss is alive. If Third Miss were to die, You also don't need to live anymore. Now, what do you have to say? I have no face to see master and third miss, and I only beg for death. Moyi already had no intentions to live after he realized that he had been tricked. The crime of causing his future mistress to die, in any of the great powerhouses, was absolute death penalty. He whipped out his sword and brought it to his neck, but Li Moying sent the sword flying away. Humph, not that easy. Gather all the shadow guards and follow me to South Yu Kingdom to save Li'er immediately. If Li'er managed to escape this calamity, then you'll be at her mercy. But if anything unfortunate happened to her, the minute he said the word unfortunate, Li Moying's heart felt a surge of heartache, too painful that his entire heart started to contract. If anything unfortunate happened, I will personally kill you in front of Li'er's tomb. Go. Li Moying didn't want to waste any more time, and without taking another look at Moyi, his figure moved and had already flashed several hundred meters apart, traveling at tremendous speed down the mountain. At this point of time, his heart was soaked in turmoil as it was tormented acutely. Every single minute and second felt like it was as slow as a year. He only had one thought in his mind, and that was his Li'er was in danger. Even if there's just 1 in 10,000 chance, he must go and rescue her. He didn't believe that crafty and black-bellied little fox would easily be done in by others. She must be waiting for him to save her. You can also listen on. Li Moying's speed was extremely fast, and within a few breaths, he had already traveled from the rear mountain to the front mountain. Just as he was preparing to leave the sect, he met with a group of people face on. Moying, you already came out from closed-door cultivation? Myself, your junior brothers and junior sisters are preparing to go to the rear mountain to look for you. Hearing this voice, Li Moying frowned slightly but still stopped his tracks. The person who was approaching was a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 40s with regular features and fair complexion. He was surrounded with a huge reception and helmed the grace of an expert. There was a beard below his chin, and one could tell that he should be an outstanding and handsome man when he was younger. Li Moying cupped his fist in the other hand as he paid his respects. Master. This person was Li Moying's master, the sect master of the sect whom he belonged to, Sect Master Murong. Murong Fei was reckoned to be South Sky region's first or second best expert, and his cultivation had long entered the 9th stage realm. But the one thing that he was most complacent about was not to become the top exponent in South Sky region, and not that he had gave birth a daughter who was the #1 beauty of South Sky region, but to have taken in such an outstanding talented genius disciple. Moying, I had already felt it in the front mountain. Earlier you had broken through to the 7th stage realm, right? You're just 20 years old and you've already broke through to the 7th stage realm. You're the first person in the history of Soaring Heaven's continent to have done so. Ha 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 ha. You're really my disciple. Murong Fei laughed heartily as the surrounding disciples went up to congratulate him one after another. Eldest senior brother, you're just so awesome. With eldest senior brother around, our sect will definitely become the #1 power in Soaring Heaven's continent. Murong Fei laughed. To have broken through another realm so quickly, your cultivation should still be unstable now, so why did you exit your closed-door cultivation so soon? There's still 7 days before the tournament, so you better use this opportunity to continue cultivating to solidify your power. When it's time for the tournament, I will hold a magnificent party in your honor and invite all the South Sky region's powerful sect. Li Moying creased his brows as he replied, Master, I'm afraid I cannot continue to stay in closed-door cultivation. I have something urgent right now and must immediately make a trip to South Yu Kingdom. What? Murong Fei went blank and thought he had heard wrongly. Return to South Yu Kingdom? Now? That's right. Li Moying nodded. Li'er had met into danger and I had just found out. So I must immediately set off to rescue her. I have to leave now, and if I'm able to find her, I will try my best to rush back before the tournament. What's the meaning of this? There's only 7 days before the tournament start. You just advanced and the profound energy in your body is still unstable, and you're intending to leave the sect at this juncture? What joke are you making? I've never met someone who does such foolish things like you. Murong Fei's expression turned ugly as he resolutely said these words. Li Moying's expression turned chilly and replied in a firm manner, Master, I understand what you're saying, but Li'er is my life. If anything were to happen to her, then I won't want to live anymore, so I must immediately go and rescue her. As for the tournament, I will try my utmost best to return by then. If I'm not able to, then treat me as the sinner of the sect. Anyway, I cannot leave her alone. You. Murong Fei hasn't expect Li Moying to shoot back so bluntly and almost couldn't grasp his breath. Although this eldest disciple's character of his was normally aloof and overbearing, but he had always been respectful to his master and seldom went against his wishes, not to mention to directly reject his request. This was the first time. You can also listen on. You want to drive me to my grave. Murong Fei's eyes turned rounded as he lamented in grief. A glint of guilt flashed past Li Moying's eyes, but he didn't show any signs of backing down or changing his mind as he stood there firmly with a resolute tone. Master, this matter is my wrong. If the sect were to suffer any losses because I was not able to attend the tournament, then I'm willing to bear all the responsibility. But I must leave now because I cannot let my woman face danger alone. I'm extremely sorry. Saying that, his fist was placed in the other hand as he paid his respects to Murong Fei. Immediately after, he turned and walked out of the mountain's main door. Stand right there. Murong Fei never expected that the face of a master was actually not useful at all. In front of him, Li Moying only said a few sentences to explain and immediately prepared to leave. Li Moying heard the voice behind him, but his footsteps didn't stop at all. Murong Fei shouted out in exasperation, Li Moting, you're the pride of our sect, and the entire sect had spent so much effort on you and used so much resources which made you who you are today. Now that the sect is in need of your help, you're going to leave because of a woman with an unknown background, casting aside your sect's pride and glory? Li Moying didn't reply. Murong Fei continued, Li Moying, hadn't you always wished that Bai Ruoli could join our sect and let me preside over your marriage? If you dare to take a single step out today, don't even think that I will acknowledge that woman, and don't even dream of becoming husband and wife. Hearing that, Li Moying's footsteps halted. Murong Fei was delighted as he thought this sentence was a vital shot which strangulated Li Moying's vulnerable spot. Even though he had thrown out all the good and bad things, it wasn't as effective as saying one sentence about that woman. This made Murong Fei gloomy, but at least Li Moying felt threatened and was willing to stay behind. However, although Li Moying halted in his footsteps, but he didn't turn around. He opened his mouth once again and the tone was covered in frost. Master, I'd always been respectful of you as an elder, so I wanted to bring the woman I liked back to show you, and not to get your consent. If you're willing to preside over our marriage, I'd be extremely glad, but if you're not willing to or even object to our marriage, it makes no difference to me at all. At the most, Li'er and I will leave the sect together. Soaring Heaven's continent is so big, surely there's a place for us out there. I've seen you wrongly all these years. So you're those kind who'd be muddle-headed in times of relationship. Do you know what you're saying? Because of a woman. You're going to betray our sect. Murong Fei's expression turned green after he was rebuked by him, and even his fingers started trembling. In actual fact, he had not intended to let Li Moying take Huang Yueli as his wife from the start. From his view, in terms of identity or innate talent, that lass born from South Yu Kingdom was totally incompatible with Li Moying. Only his precious eldest daughter Murong Fei was compatible with a genius like Li Moying. What's more, after his daughter had married Li Moying, allied through marriage, he would be able to control Li Moying better in his hands. Otherwise, even though they were master and disciple in name, but Murong Fei had long realized in the past few years that Li Moying was actually completely different from other disciples. He didn't care about the sect or master-disciple relationship. To him, it was just a matter of respect on the surface only. You can also listen on. Besides that, Murong Fei had realized when Li Moying was 7 or 8 years old, he was unable to teach Li Moying at all. Such a peerless genius with outstanding innate talent made anyone gasp in amazement and was not someone who could be easily taught by an ordinary 9th stage realm practitioner like him. For Li Moying to join his sect was really delaying his progress. The past few years had really been so. Every single time Li Moying advanced, It had nothing to do with Murong Fei at all, and Murong Fei didn't know why he could continuously advance that quickly, even breaking the record which Mu Chengying had left years ago, the fastest record for advancing to 7th stage realm. The teenager in front of him was destined to cause deterrence to the entire soaring heavens continent. And it's exactly because of this reason that Murong Fei imperiously wished that he and his sect could have closer ties with Li Moying to guarantee that when Li Moying made a rapid success in his future, he would still be bound to the sect. That was why, since Li Moying was young, he would intentionally let Murong Fei have different sorts of interaction between the both of them, in the wish that from childhood friends, they would start to have feelings for each other. But not knowing what happened, no matter how outstanding Murong Fei had been since she was young, or even getting prettier by the year, attracting South Sky regions or even other Sky regions geniuses to compete for her love, only Li Moying held a lukewarm attitude to her from beginning till now. As for this time, Li Moying had made a trip to the Dark Moon Forest and on the way visited his family in South Yu Kingdom, and in that small country, he found himself a fiancé. Murong Fei naturally could not accept this, but he knew Li Moying's temper very well. He knew he couldn't force him, so he used all kinds of reasons to coop him up in the sect. Murong Fei had not thought of murdering Huang Yueli because he knew very clearly that if Li Moying were to find out about it, he would definitely fall out with the sect. He only thought that a practitioner's cultivation route was very long, and perhaps after Li Moying had gone into closed-door cultivation a few more times and after several years, perhaps that lass in the South Yu Kingdom would not continue waiting for him. Perhaps she might change her mind and marry others, so by that time, Murong Fei would be able to take advantage of the situation and penetrate in, so that marriage would probably succeed. His plans was indeed not bad. The only thing was, Murong Fei had never expected that Li Moying would be so devoted to that lass from South Yu Kingdom. Even after he used his pride as a master and the sect's relationship to coerce him, he was not hesitant for even a single bit at all. In Li Moying's heart, that lass was more important than the entire sect. Li Moying nodded slightly, and his resolute gaze fell onto Murong Fei as he calmly and unhurriedly spoke. I don't wish for things to become like this as well. But if master must force me, I can only choose. Once he finished his words, he strode forward again, and this round, he didn't stop at all. Murong Fei was angered till his face turned green. He was extremely furious, but he could not release his rage and had to keep it in. A blue-robed disciple said softly, Master, are we going to let eldest senior brother leave like that? Once he leave, he would probably not be able to make it for the tournament. Shall we activate the mountain isolation array? Or perhaps you can go after him personally. After all, eldest senior brother is only in the 7th stage realm and is not your match. This disciple was one of Li Lingchuan's lackeys, and for him to interpose at this moment, his tone helmed a sense of gloating over his misfortune. TSK, Li Moying was usually arrogant and overbearing and was the apple of the eye of the sect master and several elders, so everyone thought his position was unshakable. To think that today, he had actually rebuked the sect master for a woman from the countryside. You can also listen on. Now that this had happened, would sect master Murong still place his trust in him and like him? Perhaps, Li Moying might even lost the position of young sect master. In this way, Li Lingchuan might be able to ascend to this position. Thinking about this, the blue-robed disciple opened his mouth again. Eldest senior brother is really unreliable and didn't even respect you. Master might as well just take him down personally and lock him up. He also doesn't need to take part in the tournament, just get second senior brother back. Let him know that the sect will still do well even without him. Second senior brother isn't worse off than him any bit. Blue-robed disciple said delightfully as he felt he was incisive and knew how to talk well. These words not only undermined Murong Fei's impression of Li Moying, he also unsuspectingly brought out Li Lingchuan, earning Murong Fei's appreciation. Who knew when Murong Fei heard his words, not only did it not unease his tension, it brought out a power slap on his face as he flew out. Who do you think you are? What do you know? How dare you sprout nonsense here? Get lost now. Blue-robed disciple struggled to get up as not daring to say a single word. He held his face and ran away with piss in his pant. Murong Fei hatefully looked at his leaving silhouette as he was unable to express the unspeakable frustration within his heart. These insensible disciples, what do they know? It won't take more than several years before a genius like Li Moying would become a star in soaring heaven's continent. Old fools like them, even though they were the sect's elders now, but by then, all of them could only prostrate on the ground to depend on him. Right now, it was the sect which couldn't lose Li Moying and not the other way round. If he wanted to leave, Murong Fei did not dare to stop him. The sky gradually turned dark. A knocking sound could be heard from the outside of the room. Huang Yueli raised her head and asked, "Who's that?" "Miss Bai, my master invites you to the rear garden." "All right, I know." Huang Yueli arose from her seat, tidied her clothes and followed the serving maid and left her quarters. In a blink of an eye, 7 days had gone past and today was the last day of Liu Buyan and her agreement. The injury on her could be said to be a full recovery and she had to admit that Liu Buyan's medical skills were indeed skillful. Some days ago, she was still lying on the bed on her last breath, but now she was jumping about energetically just like before she was injured. After so many days, she had gotten a degree of understanding on Liu Buyan's standard routine. Moreover, a puppet doll like her only needed to accompany him to eat and drink, and need not be around him daily for 24 hours. Generally speaking, Liu Buyan would be in the pill furnace room refining pills during daytime and he would be cultivating in the night. Only during dusk would he ask the serving maid over to accompany him. During this time, Huang Yueli would wear the puffy-sleeved flowing dress which he had prepared for her and put on that jade phoenix hairpin with the rainbow spirit crystal inlaid and obediently run over to the pavilion in the rear courtyard to accompany him for his meal. During mealtime, Liu Buyan would often go into a daze while looking at her. That gaze of his sometimes made the hairs on Huang Yueli's back stood up. She couldn't help but guessed that she probably looked alike to the person he liked, which made Liu Buyan keep staring at her. But why didn't Liu Buyan just go ahead and woo the lady he liked? Just based on him, divine Dr. Liu's power, looks and financial ability, if he could bring out his sincerity and faithful heart, probably very few ladies would reject him, right? You can also listen on. Every single time after they had their meals, Huang Yueli would be filled with puzzlement. But after thinking about it carefully, these matters wasn't of concern to her and she only needed to do what she should do. Besides that, today was the 7th day. After accompanying Liu Buyan to finish the meal tonight, the agreement between them should be completed and both of them not owing one another. By then, she would have taken the test at Celestial Light Academy, followed by raising her power, then going to look for Mu Chengying in Sky Emperor City. In view that Liu Buyan had completely fallen out with Mu Chengying to the point that even his name could not be mentioned, so she gauged that in future, she would never meet with Liu Buyan ever again. By the time Huang Yueli had reached the pavilion, Liu Buyan was indeed waiting for her there. The both of them had their meal as per normal and as Liu Buyan put down his chopsticks, Huang Yueli heaved a sigh of relief. The pressure on her was slightly heavy over the past 7 days, worrying that she might draw up Liu Buyan's suspicions on her identity of her previous life, so she had been extremely cautious when she talked to him. Even the name she reported was by Ruoli. Finally, she was going to be relieved soon. However, before she could take another breath, she heard Liu Buyan asked, "Do you know how to play the zither?" "Huh? You're talking to me?" Huang Yueli went into a blank. Liu Buyan turned his head back as he frowned slightly. "If I'm not talking to you, then am I talking to air? I don't have the habit of mumbling to myself. I don't mean it in this way, no need to explain, I understand." Liu Buyan stared at her coldly. "Did you feel that after finishing this meal, your task would come to an end and you no longer need to entertain the uncle who is old enough to be your grandfather? I'm telling you, no matter if you're willing to entertain me or not, anyways, the agreed duration is 7 whole days. Tonight any time before midnight, you still have to listen to my command." I know, why are you so fierce for?" Huang Yueli retorted. That was why. Pill masters were all unscrupulous businessmen. Liu Buyan was a classic example of one such person. There was just a few hours more in the night. Did he need to be so petty, to squeeze out all her value and use her until the very last moment? She silently cursed him within her heart and had never once considered that if anyone were to say unscrupulous businessman, ever since an outstanding armament master like her was born into this world, outsiders no longer criticized pill masters for being money-minded, and had all gone to criticize armament masters. Liu Buyan stared at her coldly with a proud word plastered all over his face. Sigh, the debt collector was forever the boss, and had the authority to request her to do anything. Huang Yueli heaved another sigh yet again and replied, I can play a few zither songs but my standard isn't high at all. So don't expect any melodious tunes from me. Doesn't matter, I originally didn't expect you to have any talent at all. Liu Buyan replied immodestly. What the? Huang Yueli almost exploded. Although it was for the sake of hiding her identity which made her say such humble words, but did this fellow had to reply so slickly and underestimating others like that? He really deserved to be punched badly. Liu Buyan didn't bother about the blaze in her eyes and casually pointed to one side, saying, sit over there and pay me a tune. If your tune wasn't played properly, he lowered his voice with a threatening tone. Huang Yueli hastily replied, if I didn't play properly, then it would be because of your zither and not because of me. You can also listen on. Still dare to deny? Didn't you agree to satisfy all my demands? Liu Buyan replied in an unfriendly manner. Huang Yueli stuck out her tongue and with quick steps, she walked over to the seat that he had pointed to. After a short while, the serving maids cleared the dinner table, carried a classic zither and placed it in front of Huang Yueli. Huang Yueli's eyes shone when she saw the classic zither. Wow, this is SP. This is a really good zither. She had recognized it on first instance. This was one of the top 10 zithers in Soaring Heaven's continent, Sparrow in the Cloud. But just as she joyously gasped in admiration, she managed to change her reaction in time. That's right, the identity that she was playing now was a countryside lass who came from a small nation, and if she was able to recognize Sparrow in the Clouds on first sight, then it would be too fake, so she had to forcefully change her terminology. Liu Buyan gave her a curious look, but he didn't give any further thoughts. He asked, what tunes do you know? Huang Yueli deliberated over her answer. I don't know a lot, mostly it's just classics, for example, 3 stanzas of Plum Blossoms, Zen Heart in Cloud and Water, Mountain Stream, Phoenix Demands, play this one. Liu Buyan cut into her sentence. Play which one? Huang Yueli blinked. Liu Buyan rolled his eyes at her as he replied, stupid, you're so stupid. I'm asking you to play the tune Phoenix Demands. She was unfathomably being despised by him again. Why hadn't she realized this in her previous life, that Liu Buyan had such a horrid character? No wonder he didn't manage to woo the girl that he liked and could only force other people to pretend to be a puppet doll to accompany him. Huang Yueli pouted as she brought the classic zither closer to her. Her slender fingers lovingly glazed over the zither's body and those 7 long strands of zither cords. A classic zither was as pretty as a beauty, it needed to be admired and loved by others. She could tell that this classic zither was maintained very well, and from the looks of it, Liu Buyan had spent quite an effort acquiring it. To be able to play a tune on such a good zither, Huang Yueli was jumping for joy in her heart as her spirits gradually became stern. She quietened down and concentrated hard as her finger suddenly shook and landed on the zither chord. A crisp zheng sound was heard as though the black-naped oriole was leaving the valley. Immediately following that, the rhythm underneath her fingers became faster and faster, and a melodious zither sound was played continuously as it lingered around the quiet pavilion. The tune Phoenix Demands was originally a tear-jerker, soul-stirring story which was usually hummed or sung in a low tone. At this current moment, in view of the rising crescent moon, the pavilion seemed to be filled with an ambiguous atmosphere. Huang Yueli had initially intended to hide her skills, but the minute her fingers felt the zither chords, she basically threw the thought of hiding her skills away. As though it was an ability, the minute she touched the zither chords, she had turned into that previous life's #1 zither master in the continent. She involuntarily put in all her heart and soul into this tune, making it into a superb artistic achievement. Liu Buyan was completely mesmerized, and it was only until Huang Yueli stopped when he looked at her in puzzlement, as though he didn't understand why she suddenly stopped. Huang Yueli met his gaze and said, I've already completed playing. Liu Buyan looked deeply into her eyes. I really didn't think that you could play the classic zither. And her zither techniques were so well versed. Ever since that person died, it had been more than a decade since he heard such a melodious zither sound. Huang Yueli didn't understand what he meant, so she continued asking, "And what?" "You can also listen on." "Moreover, it is barely audible. I had thought that the tune that you played would result in a wave of noise pollution, or maybe even break the zither chords." Praises came to his mouth but had been pushed back forcefully by Liu Buyan. Unsure of why this was so, every single time he had to converse with this little lass, he just couldn't help but use his evil tongue style to tease her, as though it would make him miserable if he was not able to do so. This feeling made him feel relaxed, and this sense of relaxation was something that he had not felt even when he was with that person previously. In front of that person, he had always felt that she was an almighty goddess. Even though his heart was fully occupied by her, but he didn't dare to confess even one single word and just kept dragging his feet. Subsequently, he finally decided to personally carve a phoenix jade hairpin with the rainbow spirit crystal, something which that person was always wanted, inlaid in it for that person's birthday. Other people always said this: if that girl was willing to accept the jewelry that he gave her, that meant that she understood his feelings for her. However, when it was that day, he arrived late because he was entwined by a patient, and by the time he had arrived at that person's place, he only saw Mu Chengying holding her wrist and putting on the bracelet for her personally. The goddess in his heart gave an overjoyed expression, her pretty dimples showing on her face while she was all smiles as she dove into his best buddy's embrace. Ever since then, all his feelings had turned into a secret hidden forever, buried into the deepest corner of his heart. "Hey, divine Dr. Liu, uncle, granduncle, why are you in a daze? What are you thinking about? Don't tell me you're so old that you've already become senile?" The young lady's lively voice pulled him back from his heartbreaking memories. Liu Buyan turned his head and saw the devious smile on that young lady's face as she kept staring at him. And in between her hair was that jade hairpin which he had carved that year but yet never able to give it out. At that moment, Liu Buyan's heart was struck heavily by a thought, which sprouted out uncontrollably from the bottom of his heart. He was unable to make that person stay, but could he make the her, who was right before his eyes, stay? Huang Yueli didn't know what he was thinking about. She only noticed that he was in a daze and his expression became uglier and uglier, as though he was about to cry out, so she came over to break his thoughts. She had been considered her own safety as priority, and without thinking, she knew that for Liu Buyan, a fellow who loved his pride more than anything, if she were to see himself crying terribly, would he just exterminate her? She would be released from midnight onwards, so she couldn't possibly destroy that hope at the very last moment. Liu Buyan looked at her deeply, and after a while of intense staring, until Huang Yueli's hair stood up, she subconsciously touched her own face. "Hey, uncle, what are you staring at? I know I'm pretty as a flower and everyone loves me when they see me, but your age is really too old for me." Black lines filled Liu Buyan's face as he cut into her words. "I say, I asked you to play a tune and you just played one piece only. Are you trying to dismiss me? Where on earth would you find such a convenient thing? Continue playing, until I say stop. You're not allowed to stop." Huang Yueli's expression turned black immediately. "What? Is there someone who would treat a zither master in this way? To play a tune on the classic zither is an art, and not some simple physical work. Do you know this or not? Moreover, after 11 tonight, I'm no longer your puppet doll. After 11 tonight, even if you kneel and beg me, I'm never going to play a tune for you. You can also listen on." "That's right, now that you mentioned it, you just reminded me." Liu Buyan touched his chin as a cunning look was displayed. "Since I only have 6 hours to enslave you, then all the more I shouldn't waste it. Just continue playing from now till 11 before you stop. In between this duration, you're not allowed to stop for even one moment." Why, you?" Huang Yueli's face turned green completely. If she really had to play for 6 hours continuously, then her fingers would probably be all ruined by then. "What? Didn't we agree that within this 7 days, you must listen to me? 7 days is not up yet. A person must be honest and true to one's word." "Chmph, I'll play. I finally understand the meaning of playing a lute to a cow." Huang Yueli mumbled softly, determined that her next tune would be something horrible to the max so that she could make Liu Buyan disgusted till he vomited. However, when her fingers touched the zither chords, she totally forgot all the grievances that she had earlier and subconsciously started to play properly. To use Sparrow in the Clouds to make a murdering swine sound would really be wasteful. She couldn't bear to do so. Luckily, although Liu Buyan's words were horrible, but his organs weren't really that black after all, and he didn't make Huang Yueli play non-stop. Intermittently when Huang Yueli played the zither, she also squabbled several times with Liu Buyan, and under the starlit sky, this evening went past quietly. The time slowly passed. When the time was up, Huang Yueli silently put down the zither in her hands and stood up. Divine Dr. Liu, the agreed time is up. These few days, I've been deeply cared for by you. I will never forget your kindness for saving me. However, the agreement to accompany you has now come to an end. By dawn tomorrow, I shall leave this place and set off to Sky Cloud City. Liu Buyan looked at her slightly hazy but enchanting face under the stars as his gaze set in deeply. Are you in such a hurry to leave? The agreed time had just passed and you don't even wish to stay for one more day? Huang Yueli didn't expect him to ask such a question and curiously replied, didn't I explain this to you 7 days earlier? I have to hurry to Sky Cloud City to join in the enrollment examinations. This matter must absolutely not be delayed, so I must leave. Liu Buyan replied, really? What's so great about the enrollment examinations? Isn't it held by just those few academies by those broken small sects, so what's so great about it? If you want to learn profound skills, with my one word, I will be able to send you to the top sect in the entire Soaring Heavens continent and guarantee that you will become a direct disciple that the sect would expend all their effort in grooming. When Liu Buyan said these, his face was filled with arrogance. Huang Yueli didn't doubt one bit that he was able to do so, but, please, I'm a nobody to you, so why would you want to recommend me? You've already bent your rules to treat my illness and I'm already overjoyed by that. So please stop spouting nonsense, otherwise I may take it for real. Huang Yueli gazed one look and snapped at him before she turned around, preparing to return to her room. However, just as she was about to move off, suddenly her wrist was tightly held on by someone as she was pulled backwards. She lost her balance and fell into the man's embrace. What if I tell you that everything I said was the truth? Lass, if you're willing to continue and accompany me, I'll do what I said earlier and send you to the top sect in Soaring Heavens continent. I know you're a smart girl, so you should know what choice is most advantageous for you, right? You can also listen on. What happened? Don't tell me, you still haven't found her? A icy cold voice rang in one of the superior rooms of a guest house. A line of shadow guards bent their heads and bowed in front of Li Moying, wishing that they could directly bury their heads into the ground. 7 days. It's been an entire 7 days. You can't even find one person. She's just a second-stage realm lass who is heavily injured, so she can't possibly walk too far away. But even though it's like this, you're still unable to find anyone. What do I still need you bunch of trash for? Li Moying clenched his teeth as every single word hissed out from the gaps between his teeth. His eyes were bloodshot with obvious dark eye rings. His usually pillously handsome face became haggard. A sparse beard stubble formed on the corners of his upper lips and his disheveled hair hung on the sides of his face, adding some tones of despondency. The shadow guards kept quiet out of fear as no one dared to make even a squeak sound. Amongst them, the only one who was able to converse in front of Li Moying would be Mo Yi. But as Mo Yi was the one who had committed the wrongdoing, his head was already hanging by his waist, so no one else dared to advise Li Moying. All of you, go out and continue searching. If you're not able to find her, don't even bother coming back. Scram. As though they were given amnesty, the shadow guards ran off one after another. Li Moying sat disappointedly on the chair as his thick brows arched together tightly. His heart was in a state of chaos. 7 days ago, he didn't bother about Murong's obstruction and immediately left the sect with an anxious heart. He used the fastest flying ship he could find and the entire journey only took less than 2 days before he reached his destination. He searched along the way and very quickly, he found Cai Wei and the rest who were recuperating in the medical clinic of a small town. From Cai Wei's description, Li Moying found out the truth about Huang Yueli being ambushed. even though he already had a bad premonition in his heart. But when he heard with his own ears on the truth that Cai Wei told, it was enough to make Li Moying's head split as tremors of pain gushed up, making him unable to hold up. So it had really been carefully planned by someone to lure Mo Yi away and taking action against his beloved woman. Cai Wei was not eloquent, but even so, the happenings had been described to be such a hair-raising experience, so it was imaginable on how thrilling and dangerous the actual situation had been. For just one moment, Li Moying felt that his heart was almost pierced through by 1,000 arrows. However, Cai Wei's words gave him yet another sliver of hope. Although that killer was very powerful, but our young miss reacted swiftly and made use of the surroundings to obstruct him. Subsequently, young miss escaped into the forest and the killer also took chase. I saw the forest burst into flames as though they had engaged into a battle, but after that, the both of them did not leave the forest. I feel that young miss is so smart and so powerful, so maybe she's not dead yet. Upon hearing this, Li Moying's dull eyes seemed to have lit up a little. That's right, his Leah was so smart and so powerful, how would she just give her life away so easily? Even though the opponent she was up against was several realms ahead of her, but she would surely have a way and she would surely be waiting for him to save her. From that day onwards, Li Moying gathered all of his shadow guards and organized all the men who he could move and made them search around the surroundings of the crime scene. For exactly 7 days and 7 nights, he had not shut his eyes, not taken any food and purely swallowing some abstinence pills to get through the days, worried that he might miss any news regarding Huang Yueli. Yet, Huang Yueli seemed to have vanished in thin air as her existence had completely disappeared. You can also listen on. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.